Awesome. Okay, well, welcome and bienvenue to another NeurotechX Hack Night. For those who new here, NeurotechX is an international community that facilitates the advancement of neurotechnology. Our pillars are community, education, and innovation. We have chapters worldwide, meetup events, of course this, and I think we're at 4,600 registered Slack members. So hopefully you've got a chapter in your area or perhaps a student club. If you don't, please get in touch with us and we can help you start one. And don't forget our newsletter, which you should be able to sign up for on the website. Okay. So, right. Well, it's been another super busy week. As John was just mentioning, computational neurosciences was this week, started this weekend, and as well as the last week of Neuromatch Academy, which is more academy for computational neuroscience. And definitely hoping that Abby will come back and tell us about her experience there, which leads me to the diversity meeting is postponed till next week. So for those who join us at 11 on Fridays, that meeting, I didn't know if that had gone to the Discord, Ryan.
How have those been going? What's been covered?
Good. Yeah. So some some infrastructure is being developed, and it looks like we're going to actually open up more something like applications for the diversity panel. Yeah. So I'm gonna, hopefully, that was the other thing. It was that, I forget what Abby said, but it's just like, she's also doing Neuromatch Academy, has a job. And I was like, yeah, we could do this. We could do this next week. But she'll be back and will, hopefully let us, let the entire group know more about what she and Maria are working on. Maria's in Toronto, I think, right? Yeah. So that was those were kind of like the big news or the big things happening this week. I don't know if anybody caught, this is unbiased now, especially with MagStim buying up EGI, but the MagStim Academy was this week, which was focused on TMS and plasticity, and had a great set of speakers. I really loved the. I'll get the set of speakers, but the woman from the neuromodulation group at University of Minnesota, the new. It's where Damien Fair is too. It's like the Masonic Center for Developing Brain, I think. Anyway, she's doing some, some really, I'm going to just find her name. So, together with, of course, this is the Opitz lab, which ran the NIBS workshop, the non-invasive brain stimulation workshop, is also there. So it's like she's, and they just hired Damien Fair from Washington University, and
so what is she working on?
Yeah, doing here. Let me just not. Not the Mason Center. Oh, but it is masons.unm. I'm going to pull up, let me pull up the MagStim Academy stuff because I'm not finding her website right now. And did anybody else have any news from this week? Of course, we're going to cover the awesome, Ryan's going to lead us through last weekend's Neurotech Gaming 2020 and how many people got to catch that. So while I'm just looking this up, now would be the normal time that anybody who's here new for the first time, please introduce yourself and let us know what you're interested in.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm new. I think I attended the NeurotechX Toronto meetup a few years ago. Now it no longer exists because the person who led it, I think, moved, but it was amazing. And I'm moving to San Francisco for university, so I thought I would join. I'm really excited about learning more about neurotech. I've previously built projects on my own time, but still got a lot to learn. So I'm really excited to be here. Also, I saw NeurotechX Gaming and it was so good. So I'm so happy that existed. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, news of the Toronto chapter's demise are misleading. John.
Yeah, we're still here. I mean, we're not here right now for.
It exists. Oh my goodness.
It exists. It got a reboot about a year ago. And
oh my god! I didn't know it rebooted. I thought it permanently.
But you come to San Francisco.
Yeah, but San Francisco is a great place to be as well. So you're okay. But we, hopefully when things kind of renormalize, we'll be back. We switched locations to Man Lab, Steve Mann's lab, which is a great place to be doing meetups, especially kind of tech-oriented meetups. So yeah, just tell us, check in with us. We're still here.
I definitely will.
And what was your name?
Ananya. My name is Ananya.
Ananya.
Yep.
I'm John.
Nice to meet you all.
Sorry, and yeah, anybody else who'd like to introduce themselves?
Hi, this is KK here. I'm calling. I have joined this call from London.
Awesome.
And I'm a data scientist by profession. I'm slowly venturing into the research side, but my passion is towards sports and neuroscience. So I'm just trying to see what you guys do. Yeah.
Well, so super happy to have you. Just so you know, we also do a meetup, kind of evening Europe time, be 5:30 London time on Mondays. And
okay.
That's with NeurotechX Paris, and
okay.
And I also help with that meeting. So, but super to have you join us.
No worries. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I grew up in London, so that's awesome. Okay, please, anybody else? We got
So my name is Chris. I attended this past weekend the Neurotech Gaming Conference, and it was awesome. So a bit about myself. Currently in Boston. I just finished up a PhD in neuroscience, kind of doing systems neuroscience, electrophysiology, studying kind of how the brain transforms information as it moves from brain region to brain region, associative learning, some stuff like that. And along the way, I got kind of back into gaming actually, and got really interested at the intersection of sort of neurodevice, neurotech, and gaming, specifically with the possibilities of some really cool adaptive controllers, things like that, as well as just kind of therapeutic output for all of it. So yeah, super stoked on everything and really excited to have found this community. So definitely look forward to getting to know you guys.
Thank you. Great to have you. And it's more like animal electrophys, or have you done any like EEG, human EEG, MEG?
So it was all single unit, LFP type stuff in rodents. Messed a little bit around with kind of some homebrew projects doing EMG, but have very little experience with EEG so far. But looking forward to adding that to the skill set.
Okay. Well, it just makes everything harder.
Yeah.
if it hasn't come across yet. And yeah, awesome. Well, I'm still not finding that that particular. Yeah, I'm going to find that Max Dim Academy, the speakers, because that was a great series of talks. Their videos are going to be available, and I'm going to follow up on that, John, for sure. So we are not on a very formal schedule. I don't know if anybody actually reads my the agenda that I put on the meetup, but
I read it. It was great.
Okay, good. Okay, so somebody's reading. We don't usually follow it. I at least try and put some good links in there for things to follow up on if we don't get to them. But yeah, so this evening we are joined by Julia Brown, who has introduced herself before, but I'm ask if you could introduce yourself again. And yeah, and we're going to just, if you don't mind, we'll turn it over to you for the next however long. I want to recognize that you're on the East Coast, and that is yeah. So pleasure to have you here.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be back for my second time. So thank you everyone for joining. Well, I definitely am happy to keep this, very discussion based. I think that's probably the most interesting way to do it. Not as a, particularly formal, kind of presentation. Also have a few of my team members on the call, not forced to be here. So they're, hiding in there somewhere, Kieran, Dexter, and Max. So certainly I'll have them, chime in too and introduce themselves at some point. But yeah, I'm happy to go ahead and get started.
Yeah, because I think we're gonna need time, because it seems like you're doing a lot of stuff. I mean, very crossing disciplines and technology. So looking forward to this. Okay. And sorry, my dog is asking for.
Oh, no problem. I'm sure mine will start barking at some point. So apologies in advance. But yeah, so I'll start with kind of my intro, since it's definitely related to the way that my next got started. But as you mentioned, my name is Julia Brown. My academic background is in computational biology. So originally in, kind of genomics analysis, that was around, kind of the birth, and DC was a very exciting place with the Human Genome Project, and as were many other academic centers. But that's kind of where I first, kind of got, involved in kind of the computational biology side of things. From there, was kind of trying to figure out what to do with my life, as many people are, as they're in kind of their, post or nearing grad school phase. And was very interested in kind of systems level change, reform, healthcare reform, that sort of thing. Started working as a investing associate at Ashoka, which is a social good venture capital group in DC, trying to balance something like, some of the, speed challenges that I ran into in working in, kind of the nonprofit academic, kind of side of things. And then seeing where you could tie that to, kind of financial incentives in order to bring, new solutions out into the real world. So from there, ended up starting a group called the Technology Innovation Center at Johns Hopkins Medicine. It was myself and a physicist, and then eventually a few other computer scientists. And we started partnering with, some of the brilliant clinicians, researchers at Hopkins who had, an idea for we could probably use some of the sensors in the Apple Watch, for example, to do remote seizure detection for epilepsy. We could do sepsis identification and, contextual AI for alerting physicians through medical records, that sort of thing. So anything that seems like a particularly, impactful concept that also had a pretty clear, commercialization pathway, we would build out, kind of the initial application, test it out at Hopkins, Mayo, Cleveland Clinic. And then if it really had legs, either do some sort of licensing deal to get it out of the hospital system or create a startup. So did that a bunch of times, built around 27 different, clinically integrated applications, most of which are still, in use either academically or, outside of that. Did a few startups out of that. The one, my last one before Mindex, it's called EpiWatch. It's which I kind of alluded to a minute ago. It was mostly, kind of largely a partnership with Apple and Hopkins to build what's called Research Kit, which is basically a first, electronic consenting form. And so after we did that, we then moved on to EpiWatch, which was the first application to use said electronic consenting form in order to do, IRB research. So that was great. EpiWatch is still, doing really well. Got a good team in place there, and kind of around all of that, becoming very, interested in neuroscience as I was working, with a bunch of neurologists in that side of things. So had grown my, team at Hopkins to about 30 people, and kind of, gave it off to the CTO of Hopkins, who is still running it now, and started Mindex with a few folks. Mindex is a neurotech AI company. It's I think definitely the coolest thing I've ever worked on in my life. We're very, very fortunate to be, partnered with, some really brilliant minds at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Labs, at Johns Hopkins Medicine, at Caltech, at Stanford, and a bunch of, other folks. I'm sure, I think we even talked about a few of them on our last call, who've been really dedicating their lives to, both brain-computer interface research and development, and also a more intimate understanding of, how our brains work, both for medical purposes and, and also I think purely just a little bit out of curiosity. So the first, kind of technology specifically that was being built out at API maybe in like 2013, 14, is what was called the Harmony effort, which Dexter, who's actually engineer number 1 at Mindex on this call, also worked on. But basically, this was like a camera strapped to an Oculus, or duct taped, I think, to an Oculus, more or less, which is then, either duct taped to an EEG helmet, or was used in some cases with an invasive, brain-computer interface. And that research was particularly exciting because we were able to come up with a highly reliable, decoding strategy for basically how can you do something useful with a brain-computer interface. At that time, there was a lot of academic use cases, research-based use cases for brain-computer interface. We're working on, prosthetic limb control, a lot of like valuable technologies there. But we were trying to find some way that how could we, add value to people's lives with this, not just engage them in research. So the first application that we built out in 2018 with partners at Caltech was basically using an eye tracker and electrocorticography array, so it's research grade brain-computer interface, and allowing a woman who's fully paralyzed to do a few things that seem very simple to those of us who have full autonomy, full mobility. But things like read her Kindle just by looking and thinking at the display, to like shop on Amazon, use Instagram, play the piano. We built a few apps basically based on what she was most interested in. So that was a pretty exciting very moment. We could validate both that we could decode neural signals with very, very quickly, low latency, very reliably, for basically to pull a few bits out of the brain to allow you to control a computing system. So that was kind of our first proof of concept build. I have some videos and stuff. We could go through those if we wanted to. But around that time, we were basically figuring out how does this startup go from just this little translational efforts out of many, many years of DARPA funded research into something that has a real kind of viable business model, viable product. And that's kind of when we were thinking about, all right, what is a, kind of, ethical business model around which we feel, comfortable bringing computer interface to general purpose, consumer computing, and more specifically, for a lot of different health applications.
Can I ask? I mean, and tell me if this is interrupting the flow. It doesn't have to, but I'm just curious in terms of the decoding. Does that rely on having control of the basically the visual system, or in terms of, are you using something like steady state effects to add to the computing that the person's doing, so you kind of like need some control of the platform, or
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm sorry, I'm taking kind of a longer narrative walk through Mindex right now, but I promise I'm getting to that. So basically, there's been a lot of strategies I'm sure everyone here is familiar with around the existing hardware, the existing ways of extracting neural signals from the brain. Those, when we're looking at like how do we create a generalizable, general purpose, brain computer interface that can serve a wide variety of functions, both health and general purpose computing. Kind of our core criteria where that needs to be non-invasive, needs to be portable, needs to be cost effective, but it also needs very high resolution, high spatiotemporal resolution, so millisecond, millimeter level of resolution, direct measurement of neural activity, and it needs to do that through the skull, non-invasively, obviously. That is kind of I think the thing that everyone has been searching for quite some time. So that's where a lot of research that has, that I'm mentioning at APL, both around the kind of decoding strategy and around the hardware piece, came into play. So last year, we got our first, kind of validation data set in some studies with, we started with rats, of a novel imaging system using a digital holography based approach. When we were able to resolve that signal through the skull, we then moved on to basically testing that system in humans, which we started not that long ago. So we are also, as a company, kind of preparing our transition now from stealth into, a company with a big public, narrative and persona. So you guys are all getting, kind of a sneak peek before we go through all that in September. I can also, I can post some links, if you want to read a little bit about the, kind of sensor development itself. That's also DARPA funded under what's called the N3 initiative. They picked 6 different groups to try to build a non-invasive, brain computer interface system, generally speaking, that can resolve, signals at the level that DARPA wants, which is a little more specific than what we're building. But that generally will give you kind of a sense of, and links to all the kind of publicly available research to that as well.
That'd be super interesting.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah. But please.
For sure. So that's kind of the 2 places where we're innovating specifically in, regards to neurotechnology are around the software platform in order to get, highly reliable decoded results from the brain. And that's around, specifically, we're looking at volitional signals, kind of all of this started around, control signals. How can you get, a discrete, bit 1 to 4 bits out of the brain to let you control your interaction with the computer, primarily for folks with locked-in syndrome, mobility impairment, essential tremor, that sort of thing. Basically, as we've gone through the development of this sensor, we found that we really have the opportunity for a much bigger, impact beyond that. Which is to say, how do you want to use, a sensor where you can have, image the brain at that resolution, both for research purposes and for a lot of more broadly applicable purposes, such as, a lot of mental health applications. And so I thought it was very interesting. Last week, we were talking about kind of this whole computational psychiatry side of things. It's very, relevant to me personally, and something, we talked about as a team a bunch. Where can we have, a system where we can, better understand the way that we are reacting, throughout treatments and throughout, different, whether that's, social or medication based, in order to, kind of understand ourselves better and our reactions to the world. But again, as I mentioned, we started with the control piece. And Kieran, who's on the call, who I'll have introduce himself in a second, has been, is a newer member of our team, but has definitely helped a lot with our, kind of our first, kind of product instantiations, which is, what's the best way to make a brain-computer interface that is, useful for people? What's a form factor that's deployable in, that people will actually want to buy and we're around day to day? So we kind of took our inspiration from the Harmony research I mentioned, which was to basically mount a sensor on the pair beside of smart glasses and use that as your new hands-free form of controlling, your interactions with, what is becoming ubiquitous computing, but is basically a heads-up display. So for both AR, augmented reality, and virtual reality applications, you normally have to either hold a controller or a joystick in your hand, or you have to, yell at your face via Alexa, or something along those lines. What we thought would be kind of a much better fit from a user experience perspective is to have something that's both discrete and also spatially relevant, and that's where we've been using a combination of eye tracking and the brain-computer interface in order to create what we think is a much more effective controller for next generation mobile computing.
And this is optical, not electrical.
Oh, correct. Yes. So, yes, that's a very good point. So you basically either have, an EEG, which is measuring an electromagnetic, signal through the skull, which acts as basically a volumetric conductor of that signal, which is why we then have a signal-to-noise ratio that is, particularly problematic. Kind of the core piece that we've been able to overcome with that is using an imaging-based approach. And, a lot of the, most relevant parts for why we're able to get the signal through the skull is by looking at the phase and magnitude of semi-ballistic photons as they're, coming back out from the system and being captured by that camera. So there's a lot more I'll go into there, but yes, this is, again, an imaging-based system and not a measurement of electrical activity in that way.
Sure. But so it sounds like a time domain NIRS system. I mean,
yeah, it's similar. So, for NIRS is measuring, blood flow.
Hopefully oxygenation, or I'm not sure. I mean, I take it that this is an oxygenation effect that you're.
So no, so we're measuring tissue dynamics. So it's a movement artifact. Right. So basically, as you have a laser that's being, shined, through the skull into the brain, you can basically capture semi-ballistic photons as they are scattered by various, elements in that substrate. So there's a couple of different, you have kind of a static skull, which is, one type of element that you're penetrating, basically do remote sensing of the cortex, and then measure a population neuronal response right at the surface. So specifically measuring, the basically swelling of neuronal membranes around the, influx of different ion concentrations that is, contemporaneous with the neural signal propagation.
Sure. That's awesome. We're not joined today, but we've had before Kyle Matheson. And who's also looked at this, has equipment for this, and it sounds like Kirtan Labs Eros, which I forget the exact. I forget the exact acronyms.
You mean an event-related optical signal?
Yeah, but I think they're focused on the scattering.
Yeah, I think definitely there's been, this is something a lot of folks have been working on for a while. So we're basically referring to it as a fast optical signal. The other characteristics would be, coordinated motion of moderate-sized populations of neurons. It occurs at the same time scale as electrical activity. I would say definitely the core underlying cause of a fast optical signal is still not, very well understood. From which we're definitely still looking into, and that's what most of the kind of scientific research body side of our group is focused on. We're a little more interested in kind of the engineering side of it, not so much biologically why is it working, but how do we get it to work consistently for different regions of interest, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting just because, I think David Holder's work at UCL, which is focused on fast EIT, is potentially looking at a similar physiological, contrast mechanism.
Yeah.
And he's certainly most recently focused on, some rat and like giant squid axon work to try and connect those, try and pin down the physiological mechanism. But super interesting, especially if you can make this hardware at a consumer price point.
Yep. So far, so basically where we are with that is, we're still pretty early stage, but so far we don't have anything that is, there's no, $10,000 camera or laser or anything along those lines. It's all, kind of mass-produced integrated photonics for the most part. So definitely that price point is something that we are definitely very much focused on, for sure.
Yeah.
I will say also in terms of our research collaborations, our kind of core, we have a partnership with Nathan Krohn at the BMI lab at Hopkins, good longtime friend of mine, and Richard Anderson at Caltech and Krishna Shenoy at Stanford are kind of I'd say my people that I call most frequently, and people who we have active research collaborations with. So I can also post some papers from some of that work.
I'd love to see that. I collected data from his Nathan Krohn's lab back in, my Lord, 2002. That's like 20 years ago now. Yeah, late nights at Kennedy Krieger, and trying to go find our car out in the wilds there.
But before I go much further into this, I would like to have maybe the other members of my team who I believe are still on this call introduce themselves, and then I would love to hear. I don't want to just ramble this whole time. Definitely want to hear questions from the group. In terms of the hardware, the software, use cases we're targeting, that kind of stuff. Anything would be interesting. Kieran, you on the call?
Yeah, I am. Sorry, I was on mute. Hi. Hi, everybody. So I'm Kieran Hall. I am my next is Chief Business Development Officer. I joined the company last year. Essentially, I am kind of tasked with both myself and Julia are tasked with working out how we can understand the various values and benefits of the technology that we're developing and where it can be commercialized and where we can apply it and who are the partners that we can work with to do that. My background specifically is working in spatial computing platforms. I actually joined a company called Zappa, which is a mobile AR platform as the 12th employee in the UK a number of years ago. And then since that time, I've worked for a spatial computing platform called Rokid, and who were making a platform called Rokid Glass, and I led the development of the go-to-market for that product. Actually, specifically the Rokid Glass product to tie into the NeurotechX discussion that happened over the weekend. So the talk that Dimitri gave from Tesla Suit, the Feel the Drive experience that he referenced, was also a project that I worked on, and that was using the Rokid Glass specifically. So it's it was using the telemetric data and feeding that into the Tesla Suit, but then also feeding in a real-time camera feed from the car itself from a capture device and passing that through to a display. And so that was just a nice little way to tie it back. To give you a kind of brief background about the sorts of things that I've worked on in the past, I don't want to take too much time focusing on that, but I actually created a product called Zapbox while I was working at Zappa, which was a low-cost mixed reality unit that was basically a cardboard version of a HoloLens that you could work with a mobile phone, and it had 6 DOF controllers that it would use by tracking using CV. What was really cool about that is that technology itself, we actually had a successful Kickstarter campaign, got out there for makers and people to use, but the underlying technology behind that actually then went on, and I structured a partnership with Hasbro, and that technology went into the Hero Vision product, which is the Iron Man AR game that uses the mobile device. And it's exactly the same technology. We just took the markers from the controller and stuck them on the back of a pair of gloves, so that then you could understand if someone is intending to shoot beams like they're Iron Man, for example. So that's kind of one sort of product I've worked on in the past. It's just kind of fairly interesting. My immediate background and experience is, working with large companies interested in understanding the values of spatial computing, and then also have a similar, being a type of frontier technology. It's very hard for people to understand where that technology can be applied. So you have to do a lot of research and work with these companies for a long time to work out how best you can use it to achieve their goals and what those specific metrics are that they're trying to improve. And my experience is in working with those companies and helping to unlock those values. I'll go ahead.
Yeah, no, just to expand on that, how would you, I mean, I did think that this was kind of like a perfect follow-up for the Neurotech gaming. But how would you define spatial computing? And, let's start there. I mean, in terms of, yeah,
that's a good enough question. As it is. I mean, for everyone that's not really involved, but spatial computing generally is such a muddied term, and it's so kind of difficult to follow. I actually have an article that I started writing on Medium about a year ago and have never got around to finish, which is called "Wanted: A Clearer Definition of Augmented Reality."
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the idea that people focus on this question of, have you tried AR? And the conversation of AR or spatial computing that's the kind of focus, whereas that's really just a technology type. It's for a genre of interaction that needs to be included alongside that. So it's, that the kind of high level question, have you tried a spatial computing experience, is about as useful as asking someone if they've ever listened to music. You're not really, you can answer it, but you're not going to get a lot of information from that. So in terms of spatial computing generally, the best way to describe it is that it is, or I'll talk about a platform itself. So as an example would be a Microsoft HoloLens. And what that would be is it's a device that is a mobile computing device that's worn. Generally, they're worn on the head as a head-mount display. It will incorporate a near-eye display, which is a micro-display technology. And it will also incorporate external world-facing cameras that allow you to track a user's environment, and then specifically the user's position within that environment, with the purpose of providing them contextually relevant information for the task that they're choosing to perform. These types of devices are generally, very favored at the moment in enterprise, kind of medical and also military applications, specifically because they allow you to provide a lot of contextual information at relevant points to people, but it's also an extremely high barrier to entry, which means that, places like the enterprise is a good place to start because they have a lot of money to invest in things that can save time and that can therefore save money. Spatial computing as a term itself is mostly just a way to define the action of having contextual information that's overlaid on a screen on one of these devices. And I think actually spatial computing was one of Microsoft's kind of buzzwords that they used to try and differentiate themselves from, the other stuff that was being thrown out at the time, AR, XR. But it's a pretty muddy thing. It gets even worse when you start to talk about mixed reality, which is another kind of a buzzword that is thrown out there. I think the best definition I've heard of it recently is the idea of taking mixed reality and using that as an extension of augmented reality, in that augmented reality could just be an overlay and it's not contextually tied to a spatial anchor in the space around me, whereas mixed reality is doing something that's trying to improve immersion and it's anchoring content to the real world, so it actually holds a physical space. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry if I've thrown up more questions than were originally asked, rather.
Please. Anybody else have questions? Because if not,
So one of the I can go on a little bit long. So one of the kind of interesting things about spatial computing and why we're choosing to apply our technology there is because there's an inherent control problem. There's a lot of companies like Microsoft and a lot of investment and a lot of brilliant minds focused on the idea of how do you create a device that is comfortable and useful and has a display of a resolution that's good enough for people to use, has a battery life that will last long enough, will look socially acceptable for people to wear. But the idea of no one's really solved the problem of how do you effectively interact with that device. And where our technology comes in is that we allow a much better way that is a natural improvement from all other kind of forms of current hands-free interaction, which are generally just voice or hand gestures. As an intro, I'd like to kind of stop it there and pass along to our other team members so they have a chance to introduce themselves. But very nice to meet everybody. Glad to be here.
Please. Yeah, would anybody else like to introduce yourself and give us your other takes on?
Hi, I'm Dexter. I am a software engineer at Mindex. My background is in general software engineering. I've done kind of a lot of different things in the past few years. I kind of started out primarily in robotics, prosthetics, motion planning, that sort of thing. And then I spent a while at APL, which, as Louis mentioned, is where some of the technology that we are working on now kind of originated. And there I did more robotics, did some cybersecurity for some reason, and then transitioned over to Mindex, where I've kind of shifted more to working primarily in computer vision and machine learning and data analysis, as well as whatever else we happen to be doing. We're a pretty small team right now, so we all do a lot of different stuff.
Sure. But APL's an awesome place, and yeah, should get more, should be higher profile than it is. You know, how APL got all the
And Dexter is entirely too modest in general software engineering. Has done a ton of work since day one on everything from neural decoding to efficient machine learning model deployment strategies to interface design in every different platform language you can come up with. So definitely a good one to talk to for a bunch of different stuff. Awesome. And is Max you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi everyone. So I'm Max. I'm also a software engineer with Mindex. My background is basically spent almost 10 years as a software engineer in bioinformatics research, working at a lab up in Frederick, and also did a lot of stuff with medical devices and basically working with groups of scientists to develop kind of machine learning algorithms that would take like basic human vital signs and then try to analyze them and do all like decision support type of applications that would then basically diagnose various conditions like internal hemorrhage, for example, and then try to kind of give alerts to medics treating patients. And then after that, transitioned into a series of startups, did some cloud computing startup work initially, then did some storage and security work, and after that joined Mindex and have been with the team for just about a year now, so I'm really enjoying it.
Thanks. I'm going to have to step away for just 1 minute for a small child.
Well, while he's gone, I'm not sure entirely, as also this is only my second meeting, so it kind of depends on who all is here. Let's see, Jaden, hi. One other person I know, what's up?
Hey, how you doing?
Good, thanks.
I've been enjoying hearing more about Mindex again.
Yes, Mindex is the best. But actually, I was Dexter. I was talking with Jaden about Second Sight briefly last week, and which Dexter has also done some work on, if I remember correctly. But yeah, I do still owe you an email response, Jaden. So I will definitely get that. It's been a heck of a 2 weweeks for us right now, in a good way.
Rush. I'm sure you're much busier than I am, so no rush at all.
But yeah, but I'm just curious, like, I know we have a bunch of engineers, bunch of neuroscientists, I think, kind of in this group so far. We are always, talking about, thinking about, a bunch of different questions, everything from, the hardware side of things to the signal processing, the software platform to do something useful with those signals, the neuroethical implications of those, that kind of thing. What are interesting topics to you guys right now?
I have an interesting question.
Yeah.
How long has Dexter been playing drums?
Those actually don't get as much use as they used to, because I bought those when I was living on the first floor of an apartment, and now I'm living on the third floor of an apartment. So my neighbors don't appreciate it as much.
I looked you up on LinkedIn. It says you actually got your degree from Mississippi State. Is that right?
That's correct.
Cool. Are you from the South?
I am. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee.
Ah. Yes. I'm from Louisiana, and I did a drum corps out of Memphis.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, and that's super encouraging that you came from the South and you got involved with something as prestigious as APL. That's really cool, man.
Yeah, it was largely luck, I realized in retrospect.
I did think that Jaden was going to ask you about the drums too.
Yeah, Jaden.
Yeah, I can relate. I have an acoustic set at my house, but I also have a rescue dog who cowers at anything louder than a pin drop. So I haven't been able to play them lately. I have them in my garage, but it's 110 degrees here, and that's not going to happen.
Remember to detune the heads.
Yeah.
The heat when you store them.
Yeah, I've been thinking about getting an electric kit, or either buying a bunch of mesh heads and converting mine to an electric kit. So I have an Ableton license, so I can just route it through that for now. But
Use brushes, play jazz.
Do you ever do any work on websites?
Not good enough for jazz.
Jazz drumming is insane.
Yeah, I have I went to performing arts high school, and so a bunch of my friends from there went on to be professional jazz musicians, and just absurd the type of things they do. Can never touch them.
Hey Dexter, did you ever do any work on websites?
Not really. Why?
I don't know. That's kind of the direction that I've gone in. More web technologies. So you did a lot of just machine learning on desktops and large servers.
Yeah.
How
I
are
think
y'all going to be doing computing on your platform? Are y'all going to be sending it off? Can you not talk about that? Are you going to be doing it on a computer that's near the device?
Yeah, I think it can be sometimes hard to kind of talk about like machine learning for different platform capabilities, just because the definition of machine learning has both changed and expanded, I think, over time. So Julia mentioned Second Sight earlier, which was a project I worked on at APL, which was an embedded platform, for providing a visual prosthetic. And on that platform, I did some work speeding up the plane detection algorithm that we were using, so that at the time wasn't really considered machine learning because it was very, very low level stuff. But probably now in retrospect would be considered machine learning, albeit probably do it differently. So I think in terms of where things run, it kind of depends. There are increasingly more and more tools now that allow you to efficiently and relatively easily run various neural nets and stuff on embedded and other low capability devices. Obviously, TensorFlow Lite being the biggest one, I think, right now. MediaPipe by Google, another thing they put out recently that also provides capabilities there. So yeah, I mean, it depends. Especially when you are talking about computer vision, kind of the closer you get to the camera, the more important it is to run things locally. But there are always going to be parts of that are going to be more important to try to run locally, and parts that can be kind of pushed to the cloud as needed.
I think you could always do all of that, locally, closer. I guess edge computing is the right word, maybe. And then send the results of that off to a supercomputer for large-scale analysis between all the different sessions and all the different people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think definitely one limiting factor is always going to be like what information you have access to. In some of the kind of things we're working on right now, we're doing some face recognition. And in that case, at some point you do have to compare your results to your stored data for who a person actually is. So at a certain point you inevitably do need to kind of access the cloud there. But conversely, I think there's so many so many algorithms where even like a couple of years ago, you know, the idea of running them like on a phone would be kind of crazy, and now you can comfortably run them at 30 hertz on a consumer phone, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, you would have liked. Or sorry, go ahead, John.
It's funny. I have this little button on my microphone, and it seems like when I press the button, people know I'm going to speak before I speak. Or I had a question that's kind of, okay, it's not about drums or anything like that, but I think this was maybe touched on earlier, but I don't think it was fully fleshed out. Is what is the device that you guys are, you know, going to be pushing and you developing, and what is it for? You mentioned the signals, so, and I think you said, or it was kind of implied, that it's like sunglasses or something, but I haven't had like a super clear statement. So like what's the device, what's the solution, something along those lines? Can I have a stab at that?
Sure. I'm assuming that's a question for me or for Dexter.
Anyone.
I defer to you either way, so go ahead.
So yeah, so the kind of core product is a sensor that can be integrated into a variety of different wearables in order to provide access to neural signals. So, you know, I talked mostly around like kind of the value proposition or differentiator of the sensor against existing neurotechnology solutions, and why it matters that there's an alternative hardware. Why that is useful, and in kind of the product we've currently built, where you can use neural signals to control a Magic Leap headset or a HoloLens headset, is because a lot of the next generation of wearable computers, both because they are interesting and serve specific purposes, and also because I think large tech manufacturers have kind of plateaued their iPhone sales and whatnot, and are looking for the next thing they're going to create. Which is really landing around this concept of general purpose consumer smart glasses. So basically, as you move your normal means of computing from a phone that you hold with your hands to a heads-up display, you still need a means of controlling that interaction. And so that's why we kind of combined our technology, which is a neural sensor, which can decode a volitional signal within milliseconds. So the first kind of application we built out is for IoT device control. So look at your light and think on. And we have a video I could show of that if you're interested. But basically, to just kind of like showcase some of the general purpose technologies. Our goal for that is to release a set of APIs to allow people to basically build to a set of different endpoints, and let you kind of control how you want to integrate those specific signals into your user experience for either for gaming, talking with Valve folks, that kind of thing, which I think you heard from Mike Anbinder over the weekend if you're at the Neurotech gaming group, or for kind of general purpose smart glasses. So again, yeah, building a sensor so that we can very, very quickly get discrete volitional signals out of the brain and use them for both control purposes and as a new signal source for ubiquitous computing.
So you have So you have the sensor, which I'm sure is a lot of sophisticated tech going into the hardware and some of the onboard, whatever the firmware on that, and also you said you had some kind of machine learning type, whether they're demonstrations, whether that's a core kind of product or technology for you, I don't know, but like the looking at the light and turning on the light, right? That's not the sensor, that's how you're using the sensor. So are you kind of are you in both of those areas, or are you kind of really, is that just a demonstration for you and you're not so fussed on, you're not kind of necessarily trying to push a complete product, you're more on the components? What's the emphasis?
Yes, that's a good question. So kind of also the reason we're doing this is because we don't want to be innovating on both the neurotech side and the smart glasses and all forms of digital media or interaction, generally speaking. So We've definitely tried to create a pretty modular framework to allow you to take output from a neural decoder, which uses a deep learning model. There's a variety of different strategies which we could talk to, and basically connect a specific signal we decode to endpoints of either your existing application or a new application you're building. So say I want to replace basically a joystick controller with a neural signal that is being decoded. We want to make that as easy as possible for you to just integrate neural control into an existing application space. So we're definitely building out, kind of our first, kind of proof of concept pieces around, like spatial computing. A lot of them are very simple. It's, and kind of our longer term use cases, we want to focus on, removal of distraction. Like I hate, honestly, not much of a social media person or even like really use my phone a lot, to be honest. What I do want technology to be in my life is to make mundane tasks that are a waste of my time personally, automate those, remove them from my field of view, remove them from, even my thought process in general, and have, kind of an AI that is, helpful in that sense, as opposed to one that is a little more focused on removing you from the context and environment you're in with, other people or, in your home, that kind of thing. So the idea of just look at a light, you don't have to see anything else, just think on, think off. Looking at a bunch of other, like music, next song, previous song, play, pause, that kind of stuff. A bunch of just different automation points.
So it's sounding a little bit like a kind of gesture recognition type technology in that, gesture recognition. I don't know a whole lot about this, but I know I was doing a hackathon a few years ago, and we were working with some cameras that they gave you a signal out. They had like an onboard gesture recognition kind of dictionary, and so they could do a kind of high level processing operation and deliver that as a relatively kind of low level signal that you can build into your your circuit and your use case, rather than that being done at a higher level in the system. It's coming like right out of the hardware.
The Kinect V2 does that, but it needs like a very fast USB port to send all the extra data, like the point cloud and things like that. But I think it analyzes where your body limbs are on the Kinect itself, and then sends that to the Xbox or the computer.
That's the new the two, yeah.
Cool, thanks. That fills me in a bit.
Yeah, and
really cool stuff.
In terms of those applications, I mean, certainly the question that I had from this weekend was, can you get that to be so fast, so rapid that it's, it really in something like, gaming, that a person feels like their moves are being predicted, as opposed to, my interactions with, Alexa, which are more a drawn out battle.
The whole system, basically for a specific command, from wanting to, like from basically having an object or a button or an element you want to interact with, and then having, the full decoding pipeline and the computer vision pipeline basically handling all of that for you, is under 350 milliseconds, primarily because that's, kind of the, general standard within which someone won't necessarily detect lag. And that was kind of the core piece we validated when we first started the company and first built the, first version of it. We did a partnership with Oculus Reality Labs, also to get money to pay everyone, in our first year. But basically that was the, thing we focused on, how to make, a highly performant system that can use, whether it's, EMG, which is what I think John mentioned, like a wristband, how can you use a peripheral nervous signal, or you can use, central nerve signal, using an invasive, actual neural signal.
What was the latency you said you found for like this stuff? 350 milliseconds, or?
Yes. So everything, including decoding of the neural signal, so the integration window over which you are doing that classification, as well as, we're using, in this specific instance I'm mentioning, we were doing decoding of the eye signal in relation to an object of interest in the user's field of view, and also, the computer vision processing. So basically everything from a user recognizing something in their field of view and having the desire to interact with it, to when we both decode that specific signal and apply it to the user interface, all that has to happen in under 350 milliseconds in order for them to not feel that there's a lag.
Yeah. Okay, so this is with relation to specifically changing things based off what it sees and what it senses, because in high-end gaming, the lag perception is 1 millisecond is our current goal, but that's literally just how fast we can perceive something on screen, not react to it. Yeah. That's and when moving. So you guys actually have gotten the whole
I had that same problem.
It brings up a good point. And yeah, for the whole pipeline, that's got to be under 350 milliseconds for a real world interaction. It's actually easier with, with VR, for example. We haven't done any high performance gaming on a desktop, for example. So I guess that would be an in-between scenario that I don't know. Honestly, I don't have a good response for. But in VR, for example, it's actually a little easier because the whole world is already known, all the assets that exist. So you can basically take contemporaneous with a saccadic motion of the eye, which is, at a much smaller millisecond resolution, which is what, we're using as a, basically using in order to increase the reliability of our decoders, to hit 99% as opposed to something more in the around 75 to 80% is what you get without, some sort of contextually relevant information to inform that classifier. But I don't know, Dexter, I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that in terms of the resolution of the signal or, the latency, any of that stuff.
Nothing. I don't think anything super specific other than that. Pointing out that the 350 number, is definitely more in the context of standard UI types of situations. Definitely not in the context of gaming where you have very different things to worry about.
I mean, one of the reasons I brought that up was mainly because of this weekend. And that was. And what a challenge that really is, to get that kind of reactivity. But, then the next question, of course, is where, optical signals still have hair problems, and still have placement, holding them in place problems. Even if, and of course, where you place them, it obviously limits your, essentially limits your field of view unless you're gonna do something like, unless you're gonna do something like kernel and, basically not have a consumer device, but have a really expensive device that is in place and you can do whole head optical, and but that is not going to scale. That's not going to scale down.
Sure. So yeah, definitely, placement, things we're looking at right now are basically, what is the tolerance we have for movement of the sensor from the scalp. So we don't actually have to have the sensor pressed up against the scalp in the way you have to for an EEG electrode, because again, the type of signal we're measuring doesn't really require that. It's certainly, easier. I mean, we're having people, lay down for most of the, experiments that we're running right now, just because, it's definitely easier than if they're walking around for sure. And definitely looking at ways to, maintain the, validity of the signal, of the image in particular as artifacts move in front of it, as the person takes it off, puts it back on, that kind of thing. But we've also been talking about integration into a headphone, kind of form factor. So you don't have to use, necessarily anything kind of in the front. So basically, kind of a band that goes around the back, or just even something over the top. We're targeting mostly temporal lobe right now in terms of placement, for a variety of different reasons, both because of region of interest in terms of the kind of decodes and the kind of where we've done research already, in order to validate and make it a little easier on the engineering front, and also because of thickness of the skull and a couple other factors along those lines. Yeah. Definitely. I think there's a lot of opportunities there potentially, but there's not a bunch of other things. Either you wear a helmet, you wear glasses, or you wear some headphones. So if you don't want to wear anything, yes, this BCI is not for you.
Right. Sure. But I mean, certainly this is why, people do focus on glasses or, something that attaches to the forehead. I mean, it's nice to know that it's not so susceptible to because NIRS certainly has, any kind of motion of the detector can still create, artifacts.
Mm-hmm.
This is less susceptible to those kinds of problems?
Yeah, we're still definitely, figuring out a lot of that. Things that are global to the signal itself are much easier to remove than things that are not. So it's more, trying to correctly differentiate a specific neural signal, have a classifier for just that one in the context in which the user is using it, which is also, a very interesting, I think, scientific question around, what the representation is for, different, elements in someone's brain, which is something we haven't had a great, kind of sensor for someone to wear around all day. So I think, potentially a lot of the research, that we can do with this platform will be very, will be informative to a lot of that. Also, things like being super caffeinated is a bit of a problem right now. So, we'll have to, there's definitely a lot of, confounds that we'll have to, test through, but we're calling those engineering challenges right now, not scientific first principles problems.
Sure.
We'll find out.
But a lot of people have looked at, caffeine effects in fMRI. And I think we'll be talking next month about caffeine effects in EEG. Oh, cool. We're still on for that, right, Alex? Yeah, I mean, these are, again, these are standard imaging problems that I'm very interested to know more about your technology. I
have a question on the signals. So what do they look like? So you got a fast signal that's on the order of, I guess you're sampling on the order of milliseconds or tens of milliseconds. So are they oscillatory? Do they have a characteristic frequency spectrum? Do you see EEG rhythms in there? Is it all 1/f?
It's a very good question. So we're definitely still trying to come up with a very good model that we can publish around, kind of the analogs of this signal to other existing signals, focusing on, I think, electrocorticographies and ECOG is definitely the closest, the most direct analog in terms of the characteristics of the signal, in terms of kind of what it looks like from a population neuronal response. We're looking at, kind of the low frequency potential piece, and, trying to characterize that a little bit. We've mostly been focusing not on that at all, as the, kind of state activation is something we did in order to test that this sensor works. Can we have differentiated state over, different periods of time, both from, visual cortex. So, as in a sensory evoked potential kind of paradigm where, you basically are, seeing nothing, seeing a movie start, seeing nothing, and then having you imagine specific things from that, and then looking at basically a switch from imagining a specific visual to then having a motor imagine movement. And so basically looking at differentiated states as opposed to necessarily a specific volitional signal. So we're definitely capturing, more or less I feel like we're saying because we haven't really characterized it with the level of due diligence I think you need to like say, that definitively, but definitely something we'll look into more specifically. I would say ECOG is definitely the closest analog.
And do you get, say, an evoke response? Like an EEG ERP, right? Because it's got like 2, 3, 4 inflections over about 500 to 800 milliseconds. So is there something like that?
Slide. Yes. Yeah. It basically looks like if you're doing like some spike sorting, it's pretty similar looking to that. Let's see here.
I have a question. So what kind of applications do you see your device can do that devices that are currently on the market cannot do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the specific kind of use cases are around, like we've mentioned a few times, kind of a control signal. So something where you need to be able to decode that signal within, maybe 200 milliseconds. Something where you want to be able to interact with, think about any application on your phone. If you had to wait over a second of integration time in order to tap on a button to press send on an email, for example, is that an interface you would want to use? I'm going to assume no, because that kind of was phrased as a rhetorical question, right? But basically, we're looking at, EEG has, a lot of richness in that signal, and there's a lot of applications for it, particularly for continuous control, kind of a, one parameter, kind of signal that is being decoded, or for, gathering some information about, the state of the user, attentiveness, some log of, an emotional state, that kind of thing. What was lacking was basically a non-invasive, cost-effective way to get a more fine-grained resolution of a signal. So for example, if I am imagining a word in my head and I want to use that to drive my interaction with the system, I want to think, click, and I want to imagine that word. And it's actually an example that we used in a study we did with Hopkins last year around imagined speech. Basically, if I think click, that's a signal that I can capture over and decode within a 250 millisecond window. So that's a good user experience for how to do interact with the computer directly through your brain computer interface. So that's kind of an example that I think is then more broadly applicable to anything you want to be able to do quickly, and for any representation you want to capture out of the brain at a frequency that's similar to electric corticography. What kind of the data sets you see there. I'm particularly excited for a bunch of different things. I'd like to better understand representations in my own mind, and kind of like where my attention's focused, and kind of think about how we can take some health and monitoring applications and add some value there. If you're able to see specific brain regions with a specific level of fidelity, that could have a lot of them make it much easier to actually track outcomes, that kind of thing, around variety of different psychiatric applications. I don't know, Kieran, Max, Dexter, anyone else want to chime in? What do you want to use your BCI for? Mind control?
I think for me, just the general kind of ability to get information about things quickly has always been my kind of rallying cry for what I find exciting about this type of technology. There's a lot of stuff where I do not have, I'm not interested enough to pull out my phone or, do anything like that. But, if I had the ability to just kind of like, think, a particular word or something similar, in order to get some information or interact with the world in some way that would really expand the amount of stuff I could do in any given environment.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that is one of the reasons why this gets coupled with, what we'll call spatial computing so often, is that you need it combined with these other signal. I mean, I imagine that you're going to be using eye tracking a lot, or and then in a sense, then your neural signal can be kind of like a mouse click. If you're only talking about a kind of 4-bit system, I mean, that will certainly help in terms of reducing how much you need to be getting from that BCI signal, and you're not doing whole head, whole head recordings. But
yeah, I think when we're looking at where where the science is, that you can base any development of this technology on. We still are very primitive in our understanding of how information is encoded across millions and millions and millions of neurons in the brain. So what we do know is that we can get a specific amount of information out of the brain at very low latency. Demonstrated that in various different regions of interest, motor cortex, speech cortex. There's some cool stuff Richard Anderson's doing with posterior parietal, which is kind of like a question mark, integrative regions of the brain, a lot of meta level representations. So I think in time, the complicated semantic structures are things we will be able to decode directly with very little kind of contextual information. In the immediate term, we've demonstrated that we can decode something in under 350 milliseconds and use it to control all of your interactions with the computer. With the assistance of eye tracking of a contemporaneous contextual signal. Yeah. So I definitely think it will definitely evolve over time to remove something like that. Particularly the more we understand the brain, the more scientists understand the brain in particular.
Sure. Well, I'd love to see this in labs as well. So certainly the equipment that Kyle just got, I want to say it's like, I'm not going to remember the name of the company, but this is this time domain optical equipment is like $300,000 for, I forget how many channels he's getting for that.
Jesus.
But
Kyle. Hey,
yeah,
that goes into my next question.
Well,
do y'all have patents? Are y'all how many? Are you gonna open source?
It's a good question. We do have patents, and we would like to open source. I think a key question, which actually I'm very curious to hear everyone's feedback, is there's both a point of tension and an opportunity, I think, around how much data, raw data, do we give people access to ever from a brain-computer interface, particularly as our understanding of the brain evolves over time. Do we want to ever capture that data? Do we want to just run some very efficient models on the sensor and only send some abstracted output ever to third-party developers in any scenario, or do we want to and kind of have like a split between kind of this research mode concept, which is certainly open source, and something where there's maybe a little more safety kind of built in at the start in terms of users and their privacy and access to that data over time. It's definitely like I think we need a more robust conversation around what it's going to mean to have any neural privacy. I think particularly with the Neuralink, folks are going to come have a one understanding of what whether data privacy is important, which I think maybe the answer would be no currently. So I think definitely be curious. I think most people here doing some sort of engineering work with some neural technology, generally speaking. What do you think is a good fit? How much of it you want first?
Okay, just the scientist hat on is gear that doesn't give you the raw data is thumbs down gear. Because and then there are some kind of consumer grade EEG devices that they actually, no, maybe not. I was thinking Emotive, but actually, I don't actually know the Emotive SDK very well. But it's nice to get features from devices. You know, some devices use compute some onboard things and then kind of give you that information from the gyroscope and whatnot.
Mhm.
But you don't really want to be dealing with too much kind of processed data because you don't know what's going on in the black box, right? So again, from this kind of scientist point of view, like if there's some black box thing going on there that no one's ever going to tell you what the processing is going on board before you get to the signals that you're measuring, then that would be a bit of a downer.
Mhm. I think definitely for academic purposes, I mean, I guess this is kind of irrelevant because, you know, no problem there. I think it's more like, you know, as a person who would, well, maybe you wouldn't use a brain computer interface outside of your lab ever. But, you know, what kind of, you know, reassurances would you want in terms of data privacy and security?
I think there's a healthy mix between what you said, which is doing the edge computing and being open source about how you're doing the edge computing.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. And you could always, you know, give the algorithms out for free or make it a service. That's what a lot of, I think Emotive, you know, they'll give you pay them and you get the extra data. You pay them a little more, I think, and then you get analysis, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Extra analysis tools. So you can still be open source and have security end to end. There's a way, I'm sure.
There's a version of an answer to a question not completely dissimilar to this that I've heard Graham Moffat say a few times, and it was along the lines of, you know, people are concerned a little bit about what someone might do with my brain data, right? I mean, you know, in that context, right? They're a company that they keep a lot of people's brain data stored on their servers, and they have a lot of information about people from that point of view. But the thing that he said, and it's kind of, I think, still roughly correct, although it may be less so in the future, is that you can't do so much with that data at this point in time, and there's a lot more you know, sinister and kind of personal data kind of danger just in terms of what you can do with someone's social media information, in terms of like identifying them and figuring things out about them. Then you can do a lot more with stuff that's in the public domain and people are fairly happy with the kind of broadcasting to the world than you can do with some brain signals at this point in time.
I think that's about to change pretty radically. I think that your social media will be, you know, pretty linked to your, you know, neural signatures and to a direct real-time stream, you know, from that. And, you know, maybe Mindex will have nothing to do with that. It'll, you know, Facebook's building a device. You know, I mean, you know, obviously Neuralink kernel. You know, I think definitely the time is, you know, fast approaching to have like a really, you know, a firm stance on it, you know, and some standards ideally, which we're working on, but we're definitely going to need, you know, a lot more folks to care about, you know, in order to actually have some sort of public opinion on it before it's kind of too late. You know, as soon as someone's signed, you know, or just, you know, opted in, you know, because they signed the terms and conditions for a new app and, you know, then grant access, you know, ad infinitum to their, you know, neurally connected, you know, sensor. I think it's kind of over after that.
Yeah, we've definitely gotten to a point where ethics and technology really needs to be brought back to the forefront of a lot of these discussions. I mean, we've talked about it here at the Hack Nights a number of times recently. This weekend at Gaming and Neurotech, it was brought up for a good amount of discussion. And it's great to hear you talk about it as well, and like how much we're about to see all of this stuff change in terms of like biosensors and BCI tech that will be, it won't replace like social media, but when you can combine the two, that could become kind of interesting. I mean, it's like, picture those like private studies they do at like of movies where they just ask people to rate movies or before they're released so they can change them so more people like it. Picture if every Facebook ad you are watching can tell what part of it you're interested or not interested in. And then it can actually, in real time, change that ad's narrative.
Yep.
Like pretty much take what Cambridge Analytica was doing and take it 10 steps further.
And what can we say about Cambridge Analytica's morals? I mean, there's people behind this pushing these zeros and ones around.
Yeah.
You know, you either push them or, you know, you find something better to do. And you said mixing brain-computer interface data with social media, it would probably be just about as big of a mess as it is right now.
Yeah, that's why we need ethicists and like consortiums that are not government run and aren't funded by a specific focus group or industry to look at this on broader pictures outside of like what this means for any one sector of technology, but just overarching.
It also affect trading of stocks because that about large patterns of human behavior as to, you know, how people respond to the news cycle and how that affects the stock market. I'm sure there's plenty of people working on that secretly in New York.
And there's applications that are DARPA funded, and actually we've talked about it also for traders doing emotional monitoring on them. It's actually like, I think it's slightly maybe a better use case than the kind of
just trying to be less emotional or something.
Just understand they have to make very high pressure transactions, and not necessarily always, a lot of them are not done with any data, even though they're looking at a lot of data. It has more to do with the perspective of the individual trader and the, you know, conversation stimulus that's happening at the time, more than it does even the actual like data that's meaningful for those transactions. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting.
There was a device at the Neurogaming conference, and it said it was to improve, you know, gamers' focus and things like that. And I think the wordage they used was, you know, showing less emotions, because, you know, getting upset in the middle of a game doesn't help you play any better.
I think it helps me.
Yeah, but I mean, certainly, you know, there's, it's not just that. Groups like Dolby are looking at this, your reactions to music.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Obviously, you know, Nielsen is another group where, you know, you want to be watching what they're doing, but they'll be doing it before it reaches a consumer device that that is gathering data from all of us. But it's that contextual information, you know, like you need that video stream that the person's looking at to be able to do neuromarketing. Which is, you know, why I think that like it's pretty natural to connect this with, you know, a video stream and with eye tracking and
and VR and stuff. Like that's actually the first company I saw get quite a lot of funding for trying to do these targeted, like pretty much like subconscious marketing in a sense on a larger scale in like virtual reality, and make like ads that you don't know exist inside of games and stuff, to make it, because we're so used to ads in the real world, if you start adding just ads and stuff in virtual reality in worlds like that, it won't look out of place, even though it's very much targeted advertising. And VR devices are some of the earliest devices to have high accuracy eye tracking. You can see and also the physical presence in the world is very different than looking at a screen. So three-dimensional ads and like things that feel natural, where you don't know that that object you're picking up in a game is a real world object, but your subconscious noticed, oh, I just picked up a soda bottle, and you don't even notice that it says Coca-Cola anymore, even though this game is like Fallout, or a game with completely different things, and they just can swap in whatever ad they want on whatever you're picking up or interacting with, which is pretty scary in some aspects. And like it's also, it won't be as annoying as current generation TV ads. Like movies and stuff in VR, they won't have ad spots break apart stuff. You'll just notice that all of a sudden it transitions out of the main movie or TV series or whatever into an ad and then right back in. And it's weird.
I'm still waiting to see if there becomes a platform for watching movies in VR. But anyway, I want to bring up a couple things. So one, I believe you are hiring.
Yes.
Did you? Yeah. So I know we've got a link on to your website. What else are you looking for in terms of partnerships and
Yeah, that's a great question. So definitely looking for a bunch of new hires. We're also going to be launching a new website in September, possibly beforehand. We'll see how it goes. Definitely a bunch of folks on both the optical systems side of things, neural data scientists, ML engineer, general purpose software engineers, yeah, I think we have a great team, small team, but awesome, as you can see from the three other examples here. In terms of partnerships, that sort of thing, we have a few very strong academic partnerships. We have a big study that's starting on, I think, September 1st. It's a BRAIN initiative funded NINS 5-year in-home chronic BCI study. I'm so very excited about that. Most of that, PR and stuff will come out of Johns Hopkins and our partners at Utrecht. So I can send some links for that. But in general, we're also looking for a lot of people who, feel passionately about the space and, who want to have, further conversations about, some of the, use cases and where, as we're building out this whole, what we call Mind OS, which is a platform and with a bunch of different APIs off of it for third-party developers. It's also great to be able to get feedback from people in terms of what is, kind of most useful and, in what, the platforms that we're building on, that sort of thing. I know there's obviously a bunch of surveys of developers, what languages you're using, that kind of thing. And so we have a lot of that to work with, but it's also nice to have, kind of anecdotal feedback from people who have, used other, neurotech peripherals, generally speaking. Trying to think anything else that's relevant to this group. Money, but none of you guys are investors, so never mind.
That's great. I mean, I'd definitely love to follow up with you and get links. Certainly learn more about the kind of DARPA projects that this work grew out of.
Yeah.
I think, it sounds like we're sure that this is, an active research area in terms of really understanding the physiological basis of that particular signal. And, and I think that's, it's a super interesting area. And part of that is why, why other groups like, again, David Holder at UCL, where, he's just working with EIT, but, because it's fast, because you get, you can see a change so quickly. And, but, certainly in the EIT case, it's pretty low SNR. So I think that's really interesting, and I'd love to follow up in terms of papers and references.
Yeah, for sure.
And and again, point people to that job board. Do you if you don't know about it, NeurotechX does have a job board too. So I believe you can post those jobs there too. And
by the way, you mentioned the temporal resolution. What about spatial resolution? Like, what scale are you talking about?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned so millisecond, temporal, millimeter, spatial. So 5 by 5 basically for one. You could think of it as one channel. That would be the analog.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great question though.
Is Max also on your team? Did you say? Have we heard from you? Did you introduce yourself?
Yep, I did.
Okay. What's your background? I missed it.
I'm also a software engineer, and my background is mostly 10 years in bioinformatics as a software engineer, and now with.
You said bioinformatics?
Bioinformatics, yep.
Oh, cool stuff.
Doing human physiology and some genomic stuff.
Most recently, figured out how to build stuff on the HoloLens, which means it's also very long suffering.
Okay.
Was it all Microsoft proprietary? I've never worked with a HoloLens. Do they use like Unity? Do they have their own thing?
I've been mostly using the Unity. They also support the Unreal Engine, or at least they're working on that. And also, I believe you can just do direct 3D DirectX if you want to use that API directly. So they have a few different options.
Are you using the HoloLens 1 or 2?
2.
Good.
So,
yeah, a lot better.
I don't know if Alex is on right now, but certainly we've been we're very interested in bringing neurosignals into Unity, as well as dealing with the timing issues between other components. I mean, this comes up right with wearables. Getting your wearables to synchronize at hopefully a millisecond resolution with your VR AR platform or glasses, and using lab streaming layer in that. So certainly we can post some links to those particular efforts that I think benefit everybody in terms of you shouldn't have to. Nobody wants to own this particular problem.
Yeah, LSL. So
okay. I think it can be done without LSL. I'm just going to say that.
For sure.
I'll follow up with you. I'll contact you probably tomorrow or something. Okay. I'd like to maybe share the Pong game next week or in the future.
Well, getting that is, and again, for especially for fast signals, for getting a system that's super reactive and integrating across a bunch of devices, not easy. And especially when
between devices and sensors.
Yeah, that's
the hardest thing. I've seen posts about that in the Open BCI forum, and then they never really peter out. They peter out. It's real hard.
For sure.
Have you explored using multiple sensors? I mean, so someone asked about spatial resolution just now, right? So you can improve your resolution and your coverage by having an array and trying to do kind of tomography. Is a different type of thing than having a single channel kind of by the temple or whatever. But the device that that Morgan was talking about that Kyle has is
Yeah.
you know, it's a kind of hundreds of optical channels on a head net type thing. That's what the MEG typically uses as well. Do you think that's a useful application for the channels, the sensors that you're building, or
For sure.
does it have the right kind of properties for tomographic applications?
So I mean, like, you can definitely stick a bunch of them on there, and we're talking with some design groups around how we'd make some sort of. I think pretty much everyone who has like a sensor or an electrode is basically come up with some way to stick a bunch of them in a cap, so you can get full coverage. Yeah, that's not really much of a challenge, at least compared to the challenge of getting one very, very lightweight sensor to run all the time very effectively. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like the research, the academic setting is great. It's so much, so much easier to build a product that functions well there than in the consumer scenario where, people don't even use the walkthroughs on applications that are 3 screens. It's just a very different space.
Yeah. And this upcoming grant, is this? You said it was at home. Is this like assistive technology, or
Yes.
or is it okay? Yeah.
Specifically for folks with locked-in syndrome.
Okay.
So and it's yeah, I can send a link if you want to take a look at it.
Sure. Yeah, it's super interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Did you catch any of Neuroprosthesis 2020 that was happening this week? No. Okay. Lots of good stuff. Definitely, heavy on the research side, and
that stuff's awesome.
Yeah, it's great. And
I don't know much time doing that, but
yeah, all those talks will be available too. I think I included a link to that in the meetup agenda. And it's even later on the East Coast. So
yeah,
I don't know if people still have any more questions.
I can also, I'm on the NeurotechX Slack channel. If anyone has questions after this, or I can also, Morgan, I can send you my contact info and stuff if you want to send it around.
Sure. I mean, I definitely added your Slack username on the, announcing it on Slack.
Okay.
So people should have it right next to the meetup. But yeah, that's great. So if anybody wants to get in touch, you can just, I think it's just Julia on Slack. Username's Julia. That's awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And all of you, especially because you are on the East Coast, staying up late with us. And please send out, let us know on Slack when you've got your rollout in September.
Yeah, for sure. We'll do.
Okay.
Thanks everyone for taking the time and really appreciate the questions.
No.
You all have a great night.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks so much. So I know that, I mean, it's, pretty perfect to follow up from this weekend's Neurotech Gaming. Certainly, I don't think anybody was focused on that same kind of signal acquisition, but certainly the same problem in terms of, these can be relatively subtle signals that you're trying to pull out, and certainly, and how to incorporate those in your game or in the environment, so that either you're feeling like your mind is being read, or you're getting feedback that is real time useful. So I was gonna, I know Ryan wanted to lead us through this weekend's speakers. Or, well, I'm gonna turn it over to you, Ryan, in terms of you want to take us through this weekend's talks?
Yeah. For those who weren't able to attend NeurotechX this past weekend on July 18th and 19th, hosted a couple hours of talks by a number of technologists, psychologists, and different developers, all centered around gaming with use of neurotechnology, BCI, and biosensing related hardware. And we had 6 main talks and then a lot of discussion afterwards in neuro bars each day, which, for those who don't know, a neuro bar is pretty much an after event discussion group NeurotechX typically hosts. So the 6 talks were in order, first by Mike Ambinder, who's the principal experimental psychologist at Valve. Valve is a video game company. They are known for Half-Life, Portal, Counter-Strike, as well as the Steam gaming system and Steam VR, which is one of the largest VR platforms and ecosystems out there. They are trying to learn a lot more about how people play games, as well as how psychology affects how people play games, and whether different forms of these new input methodologies will be used in the future of gaming. After his talk about what Valve does, what they think of the current state of BCI and Neurotech, we had a talk by the CEO of Brain Attach, which is they call it a biotactical gameware brain-computer interface for professional players. It's pretty much a small headband that you wear that has a number of electrodes, and their focus is on trying to allow for a bit of world modification based on people's cognitive load, to try to keep people in what's called a flow state, where they aren't bored with the game because it's too easy, and they aren't overloaded from the game because it is too hard, which I'll talk about again later because another talk brought it up. But that they want to make a game input or a game variable, in a sense, that allows the game world to detect your focus and your level of engagement on a very lightweight scale. This headset does not measure full EG, it only measures a very small band section, as well as it doesn't have very big electrodes. It looks a lot like a hairband, and it's meant to be worn with a regular pair of gaming headphones. It's a pretty cool piece of tech, but I think it needs a lot more development in terms of getting real world testing done and a couple actual games utilizing it before it can really show whether it is going to be a one of the more useful forms of control method for biosensing in gaming. After that talk, we had a talk by the Chief Revenue Officer and co-founder at Tesla Suit, which is one of the few companies out there that makes a full body haptic motion control and temperature response feedback suit. So it's pretty much the best of a lot of different types of current technology that's being worked on: full body motion capture suits, haptic suits, and then temperature and electro stimulation feedback. So they are one of the few companies that has a system that's built all of these into a single suit. And although these suits are currently not consumer available or even generally corporate or business available, because they still use a lot of custom hardware, which they're about to finish developing a lot more of a low cost electrical back end so that it's easier to get into hands of developers. But they showed a number of different experiments they've done in different games and at different events where they did haptic feedback, including haptic feedback between users in 2 different locations, where they had a football player run into a force-tracked dummy character, and then someone 500 miles away felt the impact of that person running into that dummy. And that was sent in real time over wireless signals, which is pretty dang cool. But this technology is still very expensive. On the second day, we had 3 more talks. The first one was by Adam Molnar, the co-founder of Neurable, which creates a BCI EG headset that their current version actually attaches to the back of a VR headset. Like, not this headset, but it would be this back portion would have a number of electrodes that they use to control stuff in a game world. It looks like a lot of what they were trying to do was stuff related to what people would usually consider in-game, like either telepathy, like magic, stuff where you want it to feel very natural, to not have to use button presses or different forms of traditional input methods. They wanted it to feel more natural and also allow you to have more control modalities while gaming. So one of their demos, which they showed a little bit of, was a escape room where you used your mind to interact with different things in that room and try to break out of that room pretty much with only your mind. And like, that's a very good starting point for stuff like this. And they also talked about they are currently looking at building some new hardware, and on screen they showed 4 items: a pair of headphones, a pair of earbuds, a pair of glasses, and a bike helmet. And for anyone who's been watching a number of episodes of NeurotechX, over the past month and a half, we've talked about research that has actually used things like those pieces of hardware, not made by Neurable, but that those types of hardware make sense. That there's a company that put some EEG probes that go around the back of the ear for a pair of headphones or earbuds, and that I don't remember if it would talk about here, but people have thought about putting it in the sides of glasses because that's a good little starting point for smarter glasses devices, which are every once in a while coming out here and there. And that a group recently did a study of EEG while biking, which makes sense why they showed like a bike helmet. I personally want a ski helmet. I want to, as someone who actually races and stuff, I like trying to track all of what I can while I'm skiing to see what I can improve. And if I can add EEG to my sensor collections, that would be really cool. The next talk was from Aaron Reynolds, the founder and creative director of Flying Mollusk, which is the only other game development company in these sets of talks. Like, they aren't a hardware developer. They made one of the first biosensor integrated games out there, called Nevermind, where it could use any number of consumer-oriented sensors to modify the game based on how excited or scared you were in a very simple manner, because it was a psychological puzzle game. Like, you were a psychological inspector who went into people's minds to try to analyze their traumas. Pretty much, it's kind of similar to Psychonauts, the video game by Double Fine, but that they spent all this effort integrating different heart rate trackers, a couple eye trackers, temperature sensor, I think, as well. But they really got a lot of work done when they used emotion tracking, facial emotion tracking, using the I'm blanking on the name of the piece of software, but it looks at your face and tries to tell what emotion you are currently feeling based on just little facial tics, whether you're smiling, what your eyebrows look like, all that type of stuff. And they are very interested in using BCI in the future for some of their future games, if possible, to try to...
Who are you talking about currently?
Flying Mollusk.
Yeah, and you
never mind.
Saying it again, it reminds me that, you know, I think this is still part of the Microsoft Cognitive Services. I think, I don't know what they've done with that. And AWS, I think, has some software, but I think it's just for still images. It would cost you a fortune to do it with video in the cloud.
Or no, it's not on the cloud. They're using
yeah, for comparison, what the big companies are offering.
Oh, well, yeah.
It's been around for a while. It's just much simpler. Doing it in real time at the site at a high frame rate is still cool.
Yeah, that's
And like Connect V2 can, see if you're smiling, I believe. And that's how Microsoft was even able to embed that. Because remember, they made the Kinect for the Xbox, really. And I'm just doing the hack version with my computer. So they already put that in a consumer product for a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm blanking on the name. I'll find it later on. But the last talk this weekend was by Eric Lloyd of Brink Bionics, which develops some reaction-based clickers that use probes on the back of your hand to sense when your muscle is about to be triggered. I don't remember if they said exactly whether they were using pulse or blood pressure flow changes, but that they were
using EMG with nice sensors and fast processing.
EMG?
That's kind of the impression I got. Because even like the EMG that I do with the Open BCI tech, I have like a what do they call it? A sticky electrode and everything. Having it so that you can just slip it onto a glove is pretty fancy. And then you have to have a reliable connection. I'm sure other companies,
Yeah. So,
and the interesting thing I thought was that they're doing a wired connection. And I talked to him in the Neurobar. I asked him about that. I was like, are y'all doing wired for the the hardcore gamers that just I'm never going to do a wireless system.
Yeah.
And brought up this technology that I think Logitech is using called Lightspeed, and it's next level wireless communication with low latency. He said they'd like it eventually.
Yeah, Lightspeed's really cool. I tried a Lightspeed mouse and keyboard. The one problem with those is right now there's some distance problems. Like anyone who uses high sensitivity gaming mice, where they move it a couple of feet across a playmat, that is too much for some of those sensors to keep up with at some points, because you're moving so far that it has to it can lose signal. Like they a couple gamers who looked at the tech noticed you had like a 2-foot maximum distance of transmission before you lost a significant amount of accuracy in the data.
Hey, question for Morgan, kind of on that tangent. Have you seen commercial large, high density systems ever be wireless? Are they all wired from your experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I think I showed you the StarStim system most recent. Or check out Neuroelectrics StarStim. In the sense that there's a wireless, it's a 30+ channel system that's wireless and it does TES. That's the most I've kind of, there are other companies that do that too, Brain Train, Smart BCI.
What was that again?
Neuroelectrics. So I think that Neuroelectrics is particularly interesting just because they do stimulation through their electrodes. There are lots of companies. I'm hoping that Brain Train will come talk to us in Paris. And Smart BCI is based in Russia. And Brain Products both make wireless wireless systems that. You know what? Actually, I think Brain Products does have a wireless system that scales up to 64 channels. But you'll see compromises in all of these things, right? I mean, the sense that obviously you can't solve certain things how fast can you sample on all 64 channels before you fill up your SD card or whatever it is you're writing to. I mean, potentially you're streaming, but you know, once you go to 256, it's like you've, yeah.
Yeah. So,
did you mention the impressive video that they showed for that hand glove that we're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. He had a video and it was like side by side, clearly fast.
Yeah.
It was very cool.
Yeah. So pretty much you wear it, and literally before you actually have the physical ability to press your key, your left or right mouse key, it's able to detect you wanting to press it accurately enough that it can tell the computer anywhere from 30 to 80 milliseconds faster.
It's a straight up biohack. It's cool.
Yeah, it's like, for those who don't know,
they can only make it better, right? I mean, keep iterating if they've got the funds. And they eventually they get that light speed technology when the Bluetooth entity let it trickle down.
Or light speed isn't Bluetooth. It's a different frequency.
They're using a radio module of some kind?
I don't remember what band they said they were using. Like, they might just be using a different part of the Bluetooth or Wi-Fi spectrum. But yeah, just look on Logitech's website. But like, there is a lot of work in improving wireless, which is why, like, I did a lot of research into using wireless AD, which is 60 gigahertz. And that tech has a very limited transmission range. Like, it can't go through any objects at all. Like, your body actually blocks it. So, but it's actually how wireless VR is done on the professional scale. The Vive Wireless uses wireless AD because its latency is not in milliseconds. The round trip latency for wireless AD 60 gigahertz Wi-Fi is 10 microseconds.
That's cool.
It's within margin of error of a wire. Like, literally a wireless transmission that has the same latency as a wire transmission. Like, they said they could if properly implemented, you could get consistent, like, 10 to 100 microsecond overall latency.
So I guess in the future, our keyboard's going to be wireless. I mean, it's going to be have an IP address.
Yeah. And the cool thing is you can implement computer hardware standards in it. Someone's already made a PCIe 3.0 by 1x4 connection work over wireless AD, which, for people who don't know, 1x8 is what your graphics card typically uses. For a high-end graphics card. It's a by 16 slot, but it uses by 8 for most stuff. So in a couple years, you could actually have a wireless graphics card sitting next to your computer. It's like, that's how good it is. The problem—
that's just funny.
is not latency, though. It's overall bandwidth. Its bandwidth, even though it's a lot higher than regular wireless, it can do about 4 gigabits to 8, maybe 10 gigabits per second, which sounds like a heck of a lot, but even our HDMI cables on most of our TVs and stuff, that's 18 gigabit. And now it's moving to 48 gigabit for HDMI 2.1. Like, wireless will always be about 10 times slower than wired transmission speeds, but we're getting close to a point where for most sensors and most devices, wireless will be good enough to connect to the computer, and then all the computer stuff is what needs to be running at absurd speed. So,
Morgan, what's the sensor with the most data in the world? Like, I guess lowest sensor would be a 0 or a 1 from a device, or like an analog signal that's 0 to 1, 0 to 255.
I would assume it's things that, you know, things like CERN are building, you know.
Yeah.
Like
that.
Yeah, and I think they say they have too much process. And it's
yeah,
like
we can, you know, like we can all use the storage the storage that is spare that they haven't used, you know, because these things are writing so many bytes.
So I guess it was a computer engineering nightmare just to store all of it.
So I just want to, go ahead.
I had a couple other things, but yeah, so if gamers want to upgrade their ability, they should look into getting that device because it does give you a known competitive advantage, which is pretty hard to do, and they are definitely looking to expand and improve their hardware so that it's even more efficient, because at those speeds, you're getting to the point where it's hard for it to analyze. Like, it literally needs to analyze your intention in under, like, 30 milliseconds.
Yeah, it needs to do a couple of cycles and a couple of averages to understand what's happening, and not just average every second. That's just too slow.
Yeah, so that's really cool. So that was the last talk. You can find both of these days of talks on the NeurotechX YouTube channel. You can also just look up Neurotech Gaming. It should be pretty high up on the search results. And this might have been considered like the conference for 2020, but it's not at all the end of the discussion that's going to be happening in 2020 as all this new hardware gets launched into VR space. Quite a few of these companies plan to have consumer-oriented or developer-oriented prototypes ready to send out in the fall. So there's going to be a big shift in gaming over the next like 8 months into having this stuff working, which will be really cool once games start to utilize this stuff. I know that we could talk a lot about different use cases, but I think we have some other stuff to discuss tonight. So I'll hand it back over to Morgan.
Thanks, Ryan. I mean, it was great to see. You know, I mean, it was great to see these companies that are trying to push this forward. You know, I think there's still a lot of work to be done. But yeah, this will only, you know, for cognitive neuroscientists, this is only helping to build better equipment for doing experiments. Yay! I do want to get to some other things. You know, we haven't yet checked in with John in terms of updates on the Open BCI Challenge and EEG notebooks.
Yeah, sure. We had another kind of discussion with the folks from IEEE regarding use of their data port service, which is looking promising. So they're going to give us a couple of terabytes of storage for hosting and stuff for free. Which is good. And on the kind of tool front, I'm pretty much finished merging most of the BrainFlow notebooks code in the EEG notebooks refactor branch, although there are some bugs. And so the round trip of things back into the main repo is nearly finished, hopefully.
That's awesome. I mean, I can at least report that that the fixes from Blueberry were awesome for the Linux support, and in terms of making it, anyway, like I think it would be. I mean, I don't think it's going to differ across platforms, but I was certainly just having a requirements _Linux.txt.
I just tested it.
Okay.
And Jaden's did a pretty good job. The only thing it's missing out is, like I already told him, like little details about certain OpenBCI hardware, like you might need the IP address if you're using a Wi-Fi shield and the MAC address for the ganglion, but the Cyton is ready. It's cool. The only thing I suggested was that maybe we have another question, which is, "Are you ready?" Because it was kind of like you type your name and then it went off. And so those are easy fixes. And so Jaden's already done the hard work. I'm just making little suggestions.
Yeah,
high five.
I haven't tested the OpenBCI yet, but I'm hopefully getting it this weekend. I want to thank Marion for letting me have her old system, and yeah. So, but what we didn't have a good working solution for the Muse with just the.
So the updated version of the Muse using this driver that somebody else made after they dropped theirs, that's already being incorporated into your branch, Jaden?
Well.
I'm sorry. We'll repeat that again.
Like, is the LSL in the branch that I just tested, is that working for the Muse too?
Yes. Or on Linux, probably not, because I haven't gone through with Morgan yet on how to implement the fix for Linux, but it is working on Windows.
So, I mean, I know that we've added a dependency for, the Muse, and yeah, you're using BluePy?
Me? No.
No, because I don't think you need it with BrainFlow. But anyway.
But so is the Muse for Linux working on the EEG notebooks repo now?
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool. So we can just probably then migrate over to that now if everything's working on there.
Yep. So I mean that was the only hardware I had to test, but yeah, I mean, I'm trying to get it packaged up so that this is all in Fedora, or at least the dependencies are. EEG notebooks you could still just pull from GitHub, but
you gotta include
John. Would you want to add me as a contributor on EEG notebooks?
Yep, I'll do that right now.
Cool. Then I can just contribute directly to that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Are y'all going to try and include BrainFlow in that custom distribution?
I think John said he already re-implemented all of my BrainFlow notebook stuff back into EEG notebooks, so it's all good to go.
Yeah, which is awesome, and I know Andre would love to be able to use that as a reference for BrainFlow, so that's cool. And yeah, I don't know if everybody saw that on Slack that Andre's got a Slack for BrainFlow. For those who aren't on there, I forget who brought it up, but anyway, you can get an invite from him. And so don't have Josh here. So I don't know if anybody's able to update on the crowd supply effort for EG32. I've got well, the neuroprosthesis. Did anybody catch any of those talks? Any of those days? Neuroprosthesis. I mean, some really great stuff. Again, all this, the awesome thing being that like everybody's making videos available. So I've got links for the last two MagStim Academy, but I just wanted to, the Gillick, what's her first? Yeah, Bernadette Gillick's lab, the pediatric neuromodulation, was really impressive stuff, and then lots of stroke recovery neuromodulation, which
is that FDA approved? Yeah, like pediatric brain stimulation.
Well, yes. So actually, another interesting thing, and another reason that I brought up Neuroelectrics is that Neuroelectrics got a special dispensation, which they pushed through in record time. I mean, I think this is still research, but what I thought was interesting was that like they got their IRB approval in 2 weeks. And they were pushing the COVID angle. They were like, hey, these people can't come into the lab and to get their neurostimulation. We're going to send, these wireless systems for them to use at home. And yeah, so she was showing a lot of stuff. I don't know how much of this is going to be on her.
And yeah, Morgan, did you say that there were some videos that they posted about it? Because yeah, it looks very exciting.
Which bit?
For the speakers at the neuroplasticity conference.
Oh yeah. So I think that will be more time.
Before they post it out.
Yeah, like the ones that use Crowdcast, it's great because it's like it's immediately there for you to just replay.
Are these links going to be on the meetup, or where should we find all these links?
So this is another question that's come up. Actually, I've seen this on our YouTube comments, which is like, hey, I hear you guys talking about all these links. Like, you do realize we can't see them.
Yeah, I know in my recordings, I at least hover over the chat long enough that if someone pauses the video, they could read the link. But
that's still
that's hard.
We're not adding value now.
Yeah, I mean, we can copy the chat log.
Yeah, so Alex has always been grabbing them. I've been grabbing them from I mean, we've been grabbing them from Paris too. The thing is that Paris, I mean, so one thing that's different about Paris Group is they have a website. They're kind of like professional.
Yeah.
And I mean, what I like about, for anybody who hasn't seen it, check out CogLab Paris. And, they've got pages of their projects and, their together group.
We could create a discourse forum system. Like it ends up feeling a lot like a website, and is a lot easier for most people to use than a wiki, because like forum systems are just easier for general engagement than a wiki is. And do we have anyone that would be willing to take care of a full website with like a discussion board or a forum system added to it.
Forums usually require a PHP or backend server language. You can't just statically host a forum page like you can a wiki. So actually, a wiki page, you can make something like Docosaurus. That's what we use for our docs. And it renders it whenever you upload the site, really. And it just makes a bunch of static HTML pages, and GitHub can host that for free. So
true.
What were y'all talking about? The forums for what?
Oh, it's called Discourse. It's a forum software. It's fully open source, but Docosaurus, I've actually used them with GitHub once or twice for a long-term project with a couple people. But so that could be useful if we create a really simple site, because then we can host the project files. It can have a wiki portion of it, and it just depends also how much we want to engage in having a forum, or whether we want to just direct people to the Slack and Discord, which
So I was
all of NeurotechX.
Yeah, so the thing is that I was really hoping to be able to say when we were going to have a NeurotechX town hall, because that is coming, and like one of the things that I was certainly hoping for a venue to talk about was all of these things, just in terms of like, it's it's great that you and Alex got us up and running with Discord, and I think certainly in particular coupling that with Neurotech Gaming brought in some people, and that's awesome, right? And but I would certainly like us to be coordinating this with Montreal and with basically we should all be sharing and co-developing this kind of infrastructure. And so I was certainly hoping anyway, there was going to be an announcement. I think everybody's again, the fact that anybody's getting anything done during the pandemic, hats off. So I'm not gonna anyway, it's keep thinking about how best to do this. I certainly like the GitHub. I will say as well, we've got this site, learn.neurotech.edu, that exists, and we don't update it, and it's a GitHub Pages site, and
I would like to help with that.
And I would love, and I've talked so one thing that we've talked about at the diversity meeting, talking about translations, but there's this group that was focused on the Spanish translation. And we were saying hey, we would do more with this if we just maybe all sat down and got a tutorial together in terms of GitHub Pages management. And I think that would be because certainly just being involved with the Neurotech EDU as opposed to the translations and things like that. How many times have I answered a question on Slack about products or things and saying hey, that should be on this page here, but we haven't, I'm still not quite clear what I need to modify, and who would even approve it, and
but products and projects, if we had a good website, it could just link to all of those things very easily.
Yeah, so the thing is that we do have a website, right?
Sure,
so, we do have this website, and speaking for Neurotech San Francisco, we have sf.neurotechx.com. Right. But like, I still have no idea how to access that, or, it still has basically a landing page from 2015.
Yeah. So I think Marion made that.
We know everybody in that picture, but it's 2020. I'd just like to be able to, yeah. It also says like events coming soon. Like really? Okay.
Yeah. So
I wanted to just point out, certainly, I thought it was interesting. The speaker JupyterCon is coming up, and the speaker is the fast AI guy. I'm blanking on his name, but he's a professor.
Jeremy Howard.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Jeremy Howard. Anyway, in the JupyterCon blurb about him, it was saying that like he's done all these wonderful things, and what he's currently actually working on are two things related to Jupyter. So NBDev and fast pages. And so it's both about like, Jupyter Hub, adding functionality to Jupyter Hub, and basically like a fast AI style blogging documentation that's focused on GitHub pages. And again, just given the track record, like that's super attractive, or like it's probably worth checking out. I think it's also, like it's a pretty high
web stack.
Sorry?
Is this a web stack you're describing?
No, I think so.
So I see fast AI on
fast pages. I think is what he called it.
There's
NBDev, notebook dev, and fast pages, but maybe it hasn't been released. Anyway, it was in his JupyterCon career sketch.
Is it a blogging platform?
Yes.
Okay.
Or certainly, like, well, I mean, they talked about it as a blogging / documentation.
Yeah, that's what you're saying.
But with like a GitHub Pages backend.
Yeah, I found it by Googling fast pages GitHub.
Okay.
Right there.
Gotcha. I guess fast pages is pretty generic. Yeah, I was trying to find great speaker, by the way, on Paris meetup. This neuromorphic computing person speaking, actually to a kind of specialized topic of binarized neural networks. But I was
where they were from, or like what lab?
Paris-Saclay.
Okay.
And I can get you the references. I don't know what. So I was doing the recording. Romain's on holiday. I was doing the recording. I was using the Jitsi record, and you could hear it go on. And then like in the middle, I'm not doing anything. It just is like recording stop, and I'm like, oh, sorry, and I start the recording again. And when we finish, I've got one recording, anyway, but he had a reference from Dose et al., like DOSE, like try looking that up. Like you get every kind of paper title, but super, yeah. And yes, I do know how to use the advanced search feature. But really interesting in what he, so he was doing these binarized neural networks, and for these IoT applications, even more energy efficient than kind of TensorFlow Lite kind of stuff. But what he was really like, what was really cool was his optical computing, which is just POWX.org. And anyway, so optical hashing, but a really cool open source platform for looking at optical computing. And I've got that bit recorded. I feel like I've got to have him back so we can get the first part of his talk, which is focused on these resistive RAM chips, and which I guess are related to memristors. And yeah, hopefully we're going to get Diego, who just finished up his master's on these kinds of technologies, to talk about his thesis work. Because again, like, we've been collecting memristor papers for half a year now, and
I'd be super interested to hear what you have to say.
Yeah.
I have this thing, which it's a Pink Z1 FPGA.
Okay.
And I have the IP loaded from Applied Brain Research, their NenGo brain board. And so the idea is that they they wrote firmware for this, so it's supposed to be as close to neuromorphic as possible without actually being designed for it. But
sure, we like if I don't know how you're doing this summer, but we did talk about maybe doing something on that particular topic, because that would be super cool.
Hey,
I would love to
find what you're holding in your hand on the internet.
It's a Pink Z1, PYNK or Q-Z1.
But what's the library name?
Supposed to do.
The library is called NenGo, and so if you apply brain research for like $100, I think, you can buy a license to their IP, which then you'll load onto an SD card, so you don't have to write your own FPGA firmware. But yeah, it makes it very usable, and they do a lot of like real-time neuromorphic computing stuff. It's really cool.
Yeah, so he's worked on a lot of really cool things, and it was CNS at the time, and there's always at computational neurosciences, there's always a bunch of spiking neural network, neuromorphic computing, presentations. So yeah, would still love, but he was super involved. I mean, like, this was together with, it was like Paris Saclay plus IIT Delhi or ITT Delhi, in terms of the hardware implementation. Yeah, but it was cool in terms of what he was showing, that just binarizing the classifier could achieve the same performance. Anyway, it was great presentations. We're gonna have him back because I feel awful. Yeah, I should be using OBS to my local disk and not Jitsi to Dropbox. Paris Monday has, we've got a startup coming to talk, and I know that Homa sent me, see if I can quickly, apparently Homa is online.
Hey, Jaden, have you heard of this Loihi? I don't know how you say it, by Intel?
Yeah, the Intel Loihi. Yeah.
Oh,
that's their neuromorphic chip. They have the Pohoiki Beach also.
Is this like the fastest chip that exists right now?
So it's for neuromorphic computing. So it's not like, a chip that you would put into your desktop and run your average applications. It's specifically to run biologically inspired and realistic neural networks. Because, a lot of the technology that we have for in our computers, like general transistors and stuff. They're not good at integrating signals from with like signals with discontinuities in their, you know what I'm talking about, their derivatives. And so they use memristors is the type of, I believe one they use in Low-Heat Beach to simulate and integrate these new functions much better, because they're for spiking neurons versus the rate firing that we don't use.
And all these, and that was kind of like his second talk was just focused on cryptocurrency, bit mining, but what he focused on was like the hardware developments over time.
Yeah.
In terms of going from, CPU to GPUs, from GPUs to FPGAs, from FPGAs to ASICs. And then, what he was trying to get at was that, as it was also, there has been some power efficiencies, but, that we also, it's not sustainable to continue with those power requirements. And so, it's super interesting from not from the kind of biological, the neural realism, but at the same time, like, I love that he's got a Raspberry Pi implementation of this that the lasers still cost some money, but it's kind of a proof of concept platform. And if you check, from OCNS just this week and other human brain projects, neuromorphic computing, like there's some cool optical computing simulations that I bet this could be repurposed for. So want to see what else I'm sure there's a bunch of things that we could still talk about.
Real quickly, Rich is going to bug me if I don't correct myself. I said discontinuities. It's because they're non-differentiable with spikes, because they impulse immediately, and so the signals are non-differentiable. I used the wrong words there, but I was supposed to go to Waterloo this summer before COVID hit, to their NENGO summer school, where they're going to be specifically mobilizing and learning how to mobilize systems on neuromorphic hardware. So luckily they extended their invitations to everyone again next summer, so I'll be able to go out there then.
What is neuromorphic hardware?
So these are, specialized chips for running these things super fast that you can't, software on CPUs or, now of course.
Just these chips though? I guess it's like a whole integrated system about how it communicates with the memory and things like that.
Yeah, well, certainly, one thing that he brought up, because he was so focused on energy use, was that most of your energy use is transferring information from memory to logic. If you check out, check out Human Brain Project's Spinnaker and BrainScales are two platforms that are developed, as part of their neuromorphic platform. The cool thing being that this is like super expensive specialized hardware that you're not going to build and or buy for yourself, but they make it available to you online.
Yeah.
Obviously there are things like, I think I've got that Intel, stick, chip on a stick.
Stick computer.
This camera is angled so you don't see what a total mess this is. I've got multiple surfaces just covered in equipment. My teenage daughter comes in and just goes click and just sends that to make fun of me.
Yeah, all this specialized hardware is coming way down in price, which is good. I remember years ago when I first saw like the Paralleloboard and a few like high core count computers that were 64-bit and had an ASIC, and I'm like, oh my god, what can I use this for? Because since it's general compute, it's not limited to graphics or TensorFlow applications in the same way. And now all of these other types of chips, like the neuromorphic chips, the AI specialty chips, the like ray tracing and different forms of analysis, ASICs and SOCs are getting so much easier to get a hold of, and they are what's going to like lead a lot of this hardware into the next like stages of development, because we're getting to the end of where shrinking the process node is going to help with classical computing, and we just need to make everything more specialized and more efficient now, because where Intel quantum computing gets home usable, we're just going to be at the limits of what physics can do.
It is kind of home usable. IBM or whoever has the interface, and somebody even I found out about it from a guy who did Python like tutorial with OpenBCI stuff, and then later he just used the API and sent a request.
Oh yeah,
even you just have to wait.
Yeah, or I mean home usable as in home hardware, like things people can use.
You gotta have it super cool.
The best application I've seen so far is a guy who wrote basically is using IBM's quantum computer as a back end for his D&D roles.
Oh yes. I saw that. That was so smart.
I was just like, okay, that's you win a nerd prize with that.
Control the World of Warcraft though.
No. I mean,
I gotta get going. See you guys.
All right, take care.
Yeah. So anyway, a silly one, but I was glad somebody did it. So hey, Abik, did you go to the quantified self the
Keating Memorial this morning?
Yeah,
it was good. 10 out of 10. Let me think. I mean, all the talks were good. Brain-wise, there was a lot of mood tracking, and normal self-report stuff. These things aren't consumer level enough that we can all get it. But I did buy a Muse S. I definitely.
I see it on your head.
Yeah.
100% convinced. It didn't actually end up being able to stream while charging, but I picked up another like little module on eBay, and it was a lot cheaper. So I'll be able to swap them out and hopefully gather data for a long period of time.
Hey, do you know, does that have more channels than a 2?
I think that they're exactly the same. I'm looking at the Muse LSL like stream right now.
Yeah.
And it has a TP9, AF7, AF8, TP10, and then an aux that's doing nothing.
Okay. So somebody, I asked just because somebody was asking on Slack, and I was just like, I'll ask on Hack Night and we'll find out. And I just wanted to, Gary has a great paper that just came, Gary Wolf from Quantified Self.
Yes, he did an arrhythmia talk today.
And, but he has a paper. Oh yeah, here's with Martin de Groot at I believe at Radboud. Yeah, here I just want to put this link to this in it's especially for I mean it's a great statement, you know, research statement for open humans and quantified self, and highly recommend it. I think to some degree it speaks, you know, obviously it's you know, somewhat more focused on the single subject design, but it's a good statement about citizen science as well.
Did you reference open humans in there? I searched the page and I didn't.
In the link I sent?
Yes.
I don't know if he does. I mean, this is a quantified self. This is specifically quantified self. He's a part of both communities.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All of our self data collectors and data sharers.
Yeah.
I'll need to read this one. I really will.
Was there anyone at the Quantified Self conference who talked about life scope at all? Or any of the like application based quantified self like recorders?
What did you hear about them? One of my good friends runs that, but I honestly have not been keeping in touch with him as much as I should, but they're doing some exciting stuff.
Yeah, like I know about LifeScope from the founder when I met them at
right?
At a VR or an AR building the Project North Star headset. He came up from LA and was one of the people who were building a Project North Star headset at the first major like hack day where they got like 40 people, flew in the manufacturing team from China and put together like 40 of these headsets to give to people, and 2 of them I think came from LifeScope because they wanted to work on their quantified self spatialization to put it into VR and AR. And I know like is it Liam? Because I know he's still pretty active in trying to develop a number of like WebXR types of technologies and trying to allow all of this data people can gather to be shown in your own like data like space on the web. Like picture if all of your bio data and stuff syncs to your own personal website. Not to these services, but to your own website where you have locking keys.
Honestly, they have a really cool data architecture, and yeah, Liam and people that work with him are super capable. And I mean, I'm not one to say, but it's tough from the outside to know exactly what they have done and not done, because like I'm not a good communicator, and like I'm sure that they have like a bunch of amazing stuff made, but I have not been able to get it to work for me yet. And I'm sure that's just like an ecosystem thing. But yeah, hopefully Open Humans is similar, where they have a really cool secure data sharing platform. And so yeah, definitely seeing, as with many problems, there are more communication problems than technical problems. So hopefully being able to, I'll check in with him. He's a cool guy. Pandemic has thrown a wrench in things.
So if I could ask, I mean, you know, not tonight, but I'd love it to see if you can try out your Muse S with EEG notebooks.
Ooh, yes, okay.
And I mean, at least from my reading of their site, obviously the battery pack is different.
It's supposed to last 10 hours, which is
right. So extended battery pack. And they said that it actually has a different material for the electrodes.
It's so interesting, actually, because the electrodes. So there's the pod, which is probably has the ADC and everything, and the electrodes are is a full e-textile on a fabric brand. They screen printed this on.
Yeah.
Screen printed, used some other techniques, but then they made their hard-soft connection. I think I can feel a soft circuit board in here, and they have their custom connector, but yeah, it was interesting that they went that route.
I mean, I know one of my favorite conventions in the Bay Area is Sensors Expo, and I've seen a lot of people starting to do that with different types of biosensors. Like this past year, there were at least 20 companies that all they were doing is soft circuit boards for electrodes and biosensors.
Now I understand. I understand the ear electrodes now that you show me that. It doesn't even really need to touch the ear.
It's just a line.
Could you turn it inside out for me?
Oh, absolutely.
I'm just curious.
So I was so tempted to just take it apart.
So
It's kind of expensive.
Or they hope that it'll touch that this inner part of your ear,
right?
Yeah,
so it's a really interesting ergonomic choice where it's just like, oh, hey, we'll just make a big line and then it'll just touch the top of the ear anyway, because it is tough to, get an exposed piece of skin in that area.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wore it to sleep, and it is one of those things where it's like, even when it's loose, it feels a little bit tight, so I think it'll take some getting used to. I actually just made this, the last piece just kind of came off the 3D printer this hour, but it's a headset. I made a little cutout.
Oh.
I made a little cutout.
Perfect.
My Oculus for it, so I can wear it while I have my Oculus on.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And even overnight, it wasn't that uncomfortable at all. And so the plan is to, have two of the pods, and I'm sure you know like how easy the pairing interface is. And saying once one of the pods dies, put in the other one and then charge the other one and switch them out for 24/7 monitoring.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
that's awesome.
I think it could be nice.
Trying to time lock what you're doing with that. It's a simple solution where I have a device and I can record, and I'll also do this at the same time. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, the dream. I also turned my house into a surveillance state, so I have a bunch of cameras around. So potentially time logging and contextualizing will be the dream.
Yeah.
I guess you can look back in your log and then look at the cameras and just manually say, what was I doing at that time?
Exactly.
And what's here's I'm going to give you some insights from my education degree. For every behavior, it's A, B, C, they taught us. There's an antecedent, the behavior, and then the consequence. So you're going to want to look at what you did before, whatever thing you're noticing, and then also after how you responded to it.
Yeah. And if you're logging your cameras, you can put them into a AI image recognition. Like I've been wanting to play with Spirit AI. Oh no, wait, wrong thing. Rapids.ai, which is NVIDIA's new high-speed framework for open AI development that they work on. It's like,
can you type that out?
Rapids.ai. Rapids as in like your water.
RAPIDS.
Yeah.
Cool.
And it's really easy to implement. I went to a AI education summit last fall, and the main lead from NVIDIA came by and literally showed him comparing two NVIDIA 2080s to a like $40,000 Xenon thing, and he started them both at the same time. His machine finished the same workload, which was image recognition of 70,000 articles of clothes in 3 minutes, while the other one ran for the entire talk for 45 minutes.
I mean, it's a CPU versus GPU comparison. However, anything that gets NVIDIA's drivers to work, I am for.
Yeah, but it's even faster than their regular stuff. Like it was a tenfold improvement over basic CUDA implementation.
Sounds exciting, especially with their fancier tensor cores. I think they were coming.
Yeah.
the next generation, getting those to work at full speed, that would be very cool, especially for, you know, probably straightforward TensorFlow and PyTorch frameworks. Being able to compile down to that would be awesome. Yo, thanks for sharing.
So,
but it works like pandas too, basically.
That rapids.ai website is blazing fast.
Yeah.
But it uses the reason it's so fast is because they use Dask.
Their
and so
website?
Dask allows you, Dask allows you to multiply parallelize against within the GPU itself. So it's actually like it's basically serializing a bunch of different jobs, and as one's finishing, it's already queued the next one up. That's why it's one of the reasons it's so fast. It's really cool. It's really amazing.
Using your tech on their website.
I don't know about on their website, but I mean, I'm just saying in general, it's based on. I mean, so if you know how to use pandas, you pretty much already know how to use rapids. They just have it like a slightly different call name, but it uses all the same basic framework than as pandas, which makes it a whole lot easier to learn too. It's pretty wicked.
No, I did an analysis on their webpage for rapids.ai, and I've never seen a Lightspeed score of 99.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know they got it.
And I noticed when the page loaded, like when I just did it for the first time without doing an analysis, it seemed really fast. So that speaks to, you know, they're trying to talk about GPU processing and their website loads fast. It's
Well,
yeah.
I'd certainly like us to talk about Dask sometime too. But hey, I'm gonna wrap this up. Mainly because it's time for dessert here in the Huff household. I did drop a link in the chat for biohacking. The Biohack Village for DEF CON is doing a medical device security special interest group, or check it out. I've just dropped the tweet in the chat. I think it's on the 26th. Certainly, I would love. There are lots of devices that are running BusyBox, and yeah, I think that'll be an interesting one. But I'm mainly interested in spending more time learning to get BusyBox running on new hardware that we're hopefully building. Anything else? Josh, is that Josh Brewer?
No, I'm new to your group. I'm actually in DC. My name's Josh Phipps. I just joined it for the first time.
Oh, okay. Well, how are you? Tell us what you're interested in.
Well, thanks for letting me join up. The DC group I can't really seem to do a whole lot here. I'm a neuroscientist by training, but then got into doing architectural computer architectures and sort of hung out in there for a while. But I'm kind of doubling back into neuromorphic computing, and we do a lot of AI work, and we've been doing a lot with the Rapids work right now. So we're running stuff and we do a lot of work at FDA. So we have a lot of insights on devices and stuff that's being approved. So if you guys have questions around that, I can probably give you some ideas on things, what's going on with things.
That's awesome. Check the chat log. You can see there's just a few. I mean, there's this one particularly cool optical computing platform that
I was checking that out. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Yeah, thanks. And it's great to find people like me in this weird kind of way. That I try to talk to people about this, and they look at me like I'm from Mars, and it's like I've had more fun talking, just listening tonight. I'm like, oh my god, you guys are on point with all this stuff. It's great.
Well, that's great. And your background in neuroscience, what kind of neuroscience work were you doing?
Well, this is like ancient history now, but I used to work with Ted Berger back when he used to be at the University of Pittsburgh. So now he's at USC. And so we were growing neurons onto computer chips back in the 90s. Okay. That was my first project, and then I worked at CA1, CA3 conduction, and doing. I was a neuropharmacology was my thing, so I was trying to look for different drugs that would accelerate the CA1, CA3 potentiation, stuff like that.
Okay,
sure. Yeah. So anyway, got all over the map beyond that too. So,
no, but that's super cool stuff. I mean, I don't think people realize the kind of how much work is done on tissue slices. Like active tissue slices, and of course what I'm like super interested in is what people are doing now with cerebral organoids, and basically just growing them on a chip, so that you can make all these recordings and obviously learn, have full control over the genetics, and
it's some phenomenal stuff going on out there. It's
an
exciting time to get back into it. I mean, that's why kind of I'm getting back into it, because we were always hampered by something or other, right? It was always like, you can't slice it that thin, or you don't have the right. fMRIs are just coming out when I was still in doing my master's, right? It was like, holy crap, this thing's amazing. Now it's like everyone's like, oh, fMRI this, fMRI that. I'm like, oh Jesus, like I feel like I'm like I feel like a dinosaur, but yeah, no, it's a good time. It's a really cool time, especially for neuromorphic stuff coming in, the low height stuff and all that. It's just amazing. Yeah,
definitely.
When you said you put neurons on a chip, you mean like literally
grew them? Literally grew them. Yeah, we grew dendrites onto. Yeah.
So you can put the first thing that ever happened was you put a neuron on a chip and you tried to plug in
fire it bidirectionally. Yep.
And try to get something on the other end and just. So where are we at now with that? That was the simplest thing to do in the first place.
So that was and that was in 1990.
Okay.
It's improved a bit. Yeah. So if you look up Theodore Berger,
can you put like a cluster of neurons there and then?
It's the thing is you end up with a lot of bleed. That tends to be some of the problems. So, but again, I did it so long ago that I'm sure that people are doing it much better now, because we were just using
signal would just dissipate off from the biological material.
Yeah, and it's kind of both ways too. The chips weren't as sensitive as we needed them to be, and so that was one of the problems too. Is it didn't have the signal strength basically to potentiate half the time or part of the time. It was really easy to go from the chip to the neuron. It's really simple because you can just you can amp that.
But the other way around.
Other way was a little bit harder, yeah. And I think I did that for a couple of years, and it's still out there. Theodore Berger, he's at USC. He still does this stuff. He's been doing. He's actually figured out the actual code that actually does memory transduction from hippocampus from the bottom to the top, from short-term to long-term memory, and he's actually done patch clamping studies in humans who were getting epilepsy ablation surgery, and basically was able to stick neurons into stick electrodes into the hippocampus and do readings. And he came up that the algorithms that they have are 95% common across all mammalian species. So the hippocampus works the same way across from a rat to a human. It's all the same. It's really amazing stuff. Yeah, they're the algorithm's almost exactly the same. Yeah, because the hippocampus is pretty much it's the same basic organoid.
How exactly did they get an electrode there?
Well, they were already doing. So they were people who have epilepsy, and what they do is they do ablation surgery. So they put in a bunch of electrodes where the actual initiation of the epileptic fit starts from the electrical impulse perspective.
You can't go from the front. How do they do that surgery?
They open the skull.
Depends. Well, it really depends on where. Yeah, for that one, they're coming in from the back. Yeah, it just depends on where they're trying to do the loci. So it's really depends on from a stereotactic perspective where you're going to kind of stick some things. but it's drilling a hole in the head. So one way or the other. So you got.
But that's what pre-surgical planning is all about.
Exactly right. Yeah, make sure you do hit the right place at the right time. Yeah.
What's the way to get in and do as little damage as possible?
Exactly. It's why I didn't go into neurosurgery, because I was like,
this because you said these people have epilepsy. They're severe case.
Right. Yeah. These are untreatable with any medication. These are just the last ditch effort. Because what they do is once they figure out where the epicenter is, then they go in and electrically ablate it. They kill it. They destroy it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. it's really heavy duty. It's it's sort of like a lobotomizing.
Pacemaker for seizures.
They have something like that too. They have like a counterwave system sort of thing. That's one. There's a device out there, but it has to be in a very specific area, because you get counterwaves in other areas. You stop breathing or something like that. So, there's a couple of treatments around that, and there's some new stuff coming. for device perspective around that. It's a lot more specific, if you will. But yeah, so it's really, again, it's pretty fascinating stuff. But yeah, it's just really. But yeah.
Yeah, that was the big, that was the big revelation in, like, I guess the 30s, 40s, that you could remove some tissue and cause the seizures to stop.
Yeah, you can do the other way around. Yeah, you could cause seizures too. Yeah.
Well, you can do that too. Yeah. But
anyway,
so you're joining us from the East Coast.
I am. Yep. So,
okay. Well,
I'm a night owl anyway, so it's fine by me.
Super appreciate you joining us. And are you on Slack?
I am. I'm on the Slack channel. I was actually at part of the Neuro Gaming this weekend. I had some stuff to do with my kids over the weekend, but on Saturday. But Sunday I caught up. It was really awesome. So, and I might be able to. So I'm a co-owner of a software company, and we have a platform that allows you to build like dynamic websites really easy. And we get to the point where you guys actually want to have like something where, and we can have different roles and stuff like that. People can load stuff in, and we have like a visualization tool, so you can do like 3D visualization. So you could do, it's sort of like semantics and ontologies.
Sure.
So if you want to like grouping, have you seen the tool called the Brain? Something like that. It works sort of like that.
Okay.
Anyway, if you're interested, but anyway, we can talk about it later, some other day. But
that's
but I was thinking about it when I was like, I guess it's gonna be for a while. But
we do have a website problem.
Yeah, well, I heard earlier. Yeah, and I was looking around for it. It's like, oh yeah.
And it's also bringing all our old content, and
forward, right? Yeah,
and integrating it well, so we don't have 20 platforms. Like that's the problem I face at NoiseBridge. We have Slack, Discord, Discuss, Wiki, website one, our GitHub, and like 20 other websites. And it's
goodness, yeah.
Yeah.
I did notice that somehow we magically, I mean, maybe this is just a trial, but Slack put us on a non-free tier.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
And like a whole bunch of messages reappeared, which is makes me super happy. Like, okay, they still exist. Like,
yeah. Once you get to the 10,000 limit, right?
Yeah.
Signed a petition and sent it to Slack and be like, y'all should just like gift it to us.
Anyway, these and more will hopefully, these topics and more will be discussed at our town hall. I'm gonna let the East Coasters who are past pumpkin o'clock go to bed, and I gotta get a young girl.
Get your dessert in, yeah.
Yeah, and anyway, I want to thank our videographers, Alex and Ryan, and please join us next week. We're going to have hopefully we're going to have a grad student speak about peripheral nerve stimulation. I should double check that she's still up for that. I believe she is. And then join us Paris time, same time ish Paris on Mondays. And I know we're going to have another French startup talking to us. And next week is NeuroHack Academy. Anyway, the neurohacking continues from Neuromatch Academy. And again, like all the materials are online. I believe it's fully scaling to anybody who wants to join. I don't know. I haven't checked if it's too late at this point.
Oh wow!
But all the material is there, and the people at UW who are doing this, have done this for years, and it's an awesome program. And I think and I know that they're also sharing the NeuroStars platform and other things. So there'll probably be some crossover between Neuromatch Academy people crossing into the NeuroHack Academy. Am I even saying that right, John?
NeuroHackademy.
Yeah, NeuroHackademy. Thank you. And what else next week? well, I posted the mid-August is the so Skulltech. It's been doing some, it's been sponsoring some of these events like BCI 101 and Neurotech Gaming. 2020 are doing a summer machine learning school that will be mid-August. I dropped that in Slack in machine learning and AI. The list of speakers, I mean, it just, everybody's online, which is awesome because you get some incredible people covering all the most recent machine learning developments. It looks really great, and it looked like it was fairly open. Any other bits before we go? Okay. All right. We'll see you next week. And yeah.